The heavens themselves tremble as Xianxia faces an 8-stage lightning tribulation. Divine emperors now vie to claim him as their disciple, but every offer carries a hidden price. Leave a like and subscribe to see who he chooses. Trembles, too, the alarming and bizarre image of the dark clouds that had completely engulfed the skies of the eastern divine region, had also captured the attention of the western and southern divine regions, and countless gazes and intents were currently focused on the eastern divine region. But they would never have imagined that, beneath those dark clouds that had covered the entire eastern divine region, a completely unprecedented and earth-shaking lightning tribulation was currently pouring down from the sky. An 8-stage lightning tribulation, in the God realm, where even a 6th-stage lightning tribulation was legendary. These 4 words would only provoke absurd laughter and ridicule from anyone who heard it. The notion was so absurd that no one had ever thought it existed. In fact, it was so absurd that no one had even tried to consider it before. Yet it had appeared, and it had appeared before their very eyes. Under the 8th stage of tribulation lightning, the scarlet lightning, which linked the heavens and the earth like a chain, continued for no less than 100 breaths before it finally began to slowly die down. But the sea of lightning on the conferred God stage continued to rage and toss in a frenzied manner, annihilating everything that was engulfed within it. Even though the heavenly tribulation lightning was extremely terrifying, it would not harm any living creature unless someone chose to forcibly impede or interfere with it. As a result, all of the might of the tribulation lightning was focused within the perimeters of the conferred God stage, even though scarlet lightning was flashing all throughout the sky. If not for this, it was likely that the entire eternal heaven God realm would have dissolved into a sea of lightning by now. Those who endured 3 stages were all hailed as remarkable geniuses. The ones who survived 4 stages would lord over a realm. The ones who withstood 5 stages were destined to become divine masters. And the 6th stage was a legend that had appeared only once in history. 8-stage lightning tribulation. There was no one who could comprehend what this entailed, and there was no one who could imagine just how much talent and potential one had to have to cause the heavens to react with such fear and dread. Even if one were to take all the talent and cultivation of the founders of the 4 king realms in the eastern divine region and combine in it in the body of one person, it would still definitely not result in this. Under the 8th-stage lightning tribulation, all of the outstanding geniuses within the history of the eastern divine region, who had shocked the world with both action and deed, would all lose their luster, becoming equivalent to mere dust. The red light which connected the heavens and the earth had faded, but the scarlet sea of lightning roiling about in the conferred God stage continued to toss and turn. The dreadful and extremely dense power of the lightning tribulation would not completely fade away even if another 2 hours passed. But at this time, the blood-red lightning region that hung in the sky had finally quieted down and had begun to slowly recede, just like the purple lightning region that had quickly disappeared previously. But this time, it receded in an even more thorough fashion. Within a few short breaths, it had contracted to 1/10 of its previous size, and it still had not stopped shrinking, as it gradually approached the verge of complete dissolution. The red light that had previously covered the world had also grown dimmer and dimmer following this. Finally, with a gentle whine, the lightning region completely disappeared, and only boundless and vast black clouds continued to roil and toss in the blue dome of the heavens. However, the scarlet sea of lightning atop the conferred God stage continued to release a dense scarlet glow. The disappearance of the lightning region should also have signaled the end of this world-shocking lightning tribulation. However, the black clouds continued to toss about in the sky, and it did not look like they were going to disperse at all. The oppressive might brought about by the heavenly law, which had engulfed the entire eastern divine region, remained firmly pressed upon everyone's heart and soul. Finally, it's over. Countless people muttered those words with their mouths or in their hearts. The lightning tribulation had finally ended, but the shock and horror it had evoked in their hearts would perhaps never fully dissipate. From the moment that the first bolt of tribulation lightning fell from the sky to the recent moment that the lightning region had disappeared. Now that they thought about it, it all seemed like a dream. 8 stages of tribulation lightning. If I had not witnessed it myself, I would not be able to ever bring myself to believe such a thing. The eternal heaven God emperor muttered to himself softly as he gazed up at the black clouds which covered the sky. From today onwards, the entire God realm will react dramatically to what has happened here today. This year's profound God convention will also leave its mark forever in the annals of history. Furthermore, it might be a mark that never gets exceeded at that. The dragon monarch's gaze remained fixed upon the sea of lightning, which engulfed the conferred God stage. It was only after a long period of time that he finally looked up and gazed towards the heavens. After the lightning region had disappeared, the tossing and turning of those black clouds seemed to have calmed down a bit. However, the aura in the air seemed to become even more oppressive. 8 stages of tribulation lightning, SSSS, was this truly brought about by Xianxia? It wasn't some sort of natural calamity. That was far too terrifying. It was at least 1,000,000 times more terrifying than the most terrifying nightmare I have had in my life. 8 stages of tribulation lightning. If someone were to survive that, what would that person become in the future? That lightning tribulation was so terrifying that even our sect master would not be able to endure it, so how could Xianxia still be alive? Who? Xianxia slowly regulated his breathing, but waves still tossed about turbulently in his heart. He cast a sideways gaze at Xianxia, but Xianxia continued to blankly stare at the conferred God stage, her milk-white face completely dazed. Mayan, you? Big brother Xianxia is still alive, she softly whispered. What? Xianxia's brows furrowed together, and he had even turned his body around at the sound of those words. I can sense that big brother Yun is still alive, and what? Xianxia impatiently asked. However, Xianxia did not respond. Instead, she continued to stare dazedly at the conferred God stage as a light that was more shimmery and lustrous than the stars themselves shone in the depths of her eyes. When she had engaged in a soul battle with Xianxia, she had been utterly crushed by Xianxia's despicable actions. As she suffered from the backlash of this, her soul had been invaded by Xianxia, and his soul imprint had been stamped into her soul. Perhaps the sudden feelings of love and infatuation she had toward Xianxia were in large part because of what had happened during their soul battle. And this was something that she herself had noticed as well, or perhaps it would be better to say that she was extremely clear that this was the case. Moreover, her divine stainless soul was so strong that wiping away the soul imprint Xianxia had left inside of her would be as easy as waving her hand. Yet she had not chosen to do so. Because she liked and very much enjoyed the feeling of suddenly pining for someone, she enjoyed feeling her heart fill up with joy just at the sight of him. This was especially true when she witnessed him defeating Junzile, defeating her own sister, and ultimately defeating Luo Changsheng. The feeling of elation and pride that filled her heart was something she was willing to sink in forever. She had never ever known that admiring a man, who was carved into the center of heart, could be such a delightful and satisfying thing. And today, he had drawn a previously unheard of 8-stage lightning tribulation to himself, causing the entire eastern divine region to tremble because of him. Xianxia's soul imprint had influenced her, but her incomparably strong divine stainless soul was able to use this soul imprint to sense Xianxia's existence. So if Xianxia ever lost his life, the soul imprint he had left in her soul would dissipate as well. But at this very moment, Xianxia's soul imprint still remained indelibly etched in the depths of her soul, and not only was it not on the verge of dissipating, she actually had this vague feeling that Xianxia's soul was getting unfathomably stronger. And it also seemed like there were still other wondrous and strange changes happening to Xianxia. The pink and tender petals that made up Xianxia's lips were slightly parted, as she was completely unable to comprehend what was happening to Xianxia's body. Boom, 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 boom. At this moment, a loud and continuous rumble boomed out of the sky, which had been gradually calming down. Everyone present was just about to involuntarily lift their heads towards a sky when an earth-shaking thunderclap suddenly resounded in the sky. Crack! This thunderclap seemed to have exploded simultaneously in the ears and the deepest parts of the souls of all those who were present. This caused their bodies to tremble violently as their faces lost all color, moreover. The most terrifying thing was that all the higher realm kings, star gods, moon gods, their guardians, and even the god emperors themselves seemed to have been smashed by a heavenly hammer in that instant. Their bodies violently shook as expressions of shock and amazement appeared on their faces. Crack, K-A-A-A, boom, crack, C-R-A-A, C-C-K-K-K-K. The lightning which had already died down suddenly began to shine crazily. With just a single glance upwards, one would be able to see countless bolts of lightning chaotically crackling about in those black clouds. Half of these lightning bolts were purple, half of them were scarlet, and there seemed to be an innumerable amount of lightning bolts wreaking havoc across the sky at any given moment. As the devastation spread, It was accompanied by extremely dense thunderclaps which shook the very heavens themselves. The black clouds that covered the sky began to violently surge like boiling water, the violent movements resembling a feral beast which had escaped its bindings as they tossed and turned in the sky. An invisible aura which grew more and more terrifying and oppressive with each passing moment seemed to cover the entire eastern divine region. What is happening? Oh, what's happening now? Ah, crack. Crack? Boom, boom, crack. Countless lightning bolts shook the sky at every instant as the crazily flashing lightning webbed the entire sky like a dense spider web. The black clouds began to slowly sink amidst their violent tossing, as if they were carrying the sky with them as they collapsed towards the earth. Furthermore, it was at this moment that the very space around them started to faintly tremble. This just what exactly is. The eternal heaven god emperor raised his head to sky. He could very clearly sense that space itself had started to shudder and tremble. But what was a million times more terrifying than this was that an oppressive might, which caused his heart and soul to shake with shock and fear, was descending from the heavens. And it was getting closer and closer, heavier and heavier. An oppressive might that would cause even a god emperor to shake in a fear. The heavenly mystery, three elders, who had remained prostrated on the floor all this time, suddenly shot up as if they were struck by lightning. Three ancient faces had gone completely white from extreme shock and fear, and the pupils in their eyes were so wide that they looked close to rupturing. The heavenly law is trembling. How could such a thing happen? As the people who were most able to sense the power of the heavenly law, at this moment, they were actually able to feel terror and fear emanating from it. It was just as if mere mortals were facing an ancient devil god. They would shake with fear as they lost all rationality. They would not hesitate to forever perish from this world. The power of the heavenly law, which monitored and maintained the laws and order that governed the mortal world, which no one could defy, which everyone feared, were actually trembling fear at this very moment. This was something that they would not ever be able to believe or accept even if they destroyed all of the knowledge in their heads. Crack. Amidst the aura and sounds which seemed to signal the end of days, the sky suddenly ruptured open, and a beam of lustrous white light shone down from the crack as it shot toward the conferred god stage and landed in the area where Xianxia was supposed to be. Even though this beam of white light seemed very gentle and was not glaring to the eyes at all, it had blanketed the entire world in deathly white the very instant it had appeared. The area which was illuminated by the white light gradually began to increase and slowly formed a luminous pale white region amidst the roiling black clouds. Streaks of white lightning flashed within it as it quickly began to grow denser and denser. Astonishingly enough, this was a white lightning region. The moment this incomparably bizarre and wondrous white lightning region formed, all of the expressions of the divine sovereigns and divine masters present greatly changed. Moreover, most of the people who were below the level of divine sovereign shook uncontrollably as sweat drenched their bodies like rain. Because following the appearance of this white lightning region, an oppressive might that originated from the heavenly law had appeared. It was an oppressive might that was so huge that it exceeded their imagination and all of their knowledge. It was an oppressive might that was so overbearing that it far exceeded their endurance by countless times. Underneath this oppressive might that had originated from the heavenly law itself, these divine, profound practitioners felt their bodies go limp and soft as their very souls trembled and shuddered. It was as if they were tiny bugs facing the boundless sky, as they could barely resist the urge to prostrate themselves in worship. A lightning region, a pale white lightning region. In the middle of that lightning region, amidst the dense lightning, a white figure seemed to be weaving through it. As that white figure slowly grew clearer and clearer, the audience could, to their astonishment, make out that it was a white lightning dragon. Extreme reverence, extreme terror, and extreme shock. It felt as if their souls were being directly wrenched from their bodies. But even their souls, which were shocked to the point where everything felt fleeting, also noticed an extremely terrifying reality. The lightning tribulation had not stopped. That bizarre pale white lightning region was clearly the 9th stage of tribulation lightning. Kui, withdraw, the eternal heaven god emperor roared. Honorable Kui had always been the closest person to the conferred god stage, and even when the scarlet lightning sword fell from the sky, he had not moved an inch. Furthermore, with his formidable cultivation, that scarlet lightning sword would indeed pose no harm to him. But the lightning region that was congealing contained an absolute heavenly might which caused the souls of all the divine masters and even the God Emperors to tremble. After the eternal Heaven God Emperor had let out that ferocious roar, Honorable Kui did not hesitate to make a quick escape. But his pupils continued to tremble uncontrollably. In the center of the conferred God stage, Yun-Chi slowly raised his head within the sea of scarlet lightning, as the white lightning dragon that swam within the pale white lightning region reflected in his eyes. A voice that came out of nowhere informed him that this was the incarnation of the heavenly law itself. Wrath-black clouds covered the sky and alarming lightning filled the air. It was as if the entire eastern divine region was being covered in a big wok. The atmosphere had become extremely oppressive and suffocating. Furthermore, gigantic tidal waves were surging and churning in countless ocean regions, despite the complete absence of wind, and all four corners of the eastern divine region were blanketed with a terrifying aura, which seemed to signal the coming of the end of days. Moreover, beneath the white lightning domain, the space around the conferred God stage continued to violently shudder. That was the violent trembling of the very heavenly law itself. Within the lightning domain, the indistinct image of the pale white lightning dragon was gradually becoming more and more solid as it stopped its coiling motion. Slowly, a lustrous white dragon head stretched out from the depths of the lightning domain. In that instance, countless bolts of lightning shook the sky. Most of the profound practitioners were so shaken by this that they numbly sank to the ground. Every fiber of their being caused them to curl up and tremble weakly, and no matter how much effort they mustered, they could not force their limp bodies back to their feet. How could this be possible? The eyes of the eternal Heaven God Emperor swept over the chaos that had engulfed the conferred God stage as his heart grew more and more alarmed. The power that belonged to the heavenly law was a power of law and governance that was placed above all beings. It was an existence that was everywhere, but at the same time, it was also an existence that was impossible to fathom. But the most observable phenomenon of the heavenly law was the lightning tribulations that were sent down. The lightning tribulations sent by the heavenly law were originally only used to punish and test those profound practitioners which had broken through to the divine tribulation realm. It was classified as a kind of principle and governance that was under the purview of the heavenly law. This was something that was regarded as the most basic knowledge among all profound practitioners of the divine way. But the current power, which came from the heavenly law and was flowing out, had already exceeded the category of lightning tribulation countless times over. In fact, it had already gone beyond the limit of what a human could possibly bear. Just the oppressive might alone was enough to shock and terrify a whole bunch of divine, profound practitioners to the extent that they wished for death instead. This definitely was not merely just a test. It was definitely the might of the heavenly law displayed to its extreme limit. This was a complete and thorough punishment, one which left no room for interpretation. If the heavenly law had not felt the most extreme fear, then this would not have happened. The so-called jealousy of the heavens had always merely been words used to express great regret, because how could there really be an existence in this world that would provoke the envy of the heavenly law? But right now, everyone present could clearly feel that they were witnessing the true jealousy of the heavens. 9 tribulations, 9 tribulations. The head of the heavenly mystery, 3 elders, Mo Yu, muttered to himself in a dazed and dispirited manner. Is it truly 9 tribulations? Mo Wen's current mental state mirrored that of Mo Yu's. 9 tribulations, the predictions of our ancestor. Mo Yu mumbled with a dazed expression on his face. It was as if he had entered a dream world. But at this moment, Mo Yu's body suddenly seized up and shook. He turned towards the eternal Heaven God Emperor and shouted, God Emperor, quickly raise up the barrier. The power of the heavenly law has already gone berserk. It is possible that the others may get swept up in this as well. Unless there was someone who was willing to court death and forcibly interfere, a lightning tribulation would definitely never harm other people. The might of the previous 8 stages of tribulation lightning had already been vast, but all of it had been solely focused within the confines of the conferred God stage, and not a single bit of it had leaked out. But right now, the power of the heavenly law was shaking and going out of control, and even the great divine masters and God emperors in this place could feel it perfectly clearly, much less the heavenly mystery 3 elders. The eternal Heaven God Emperor did not hesitate in the slightest. He let out a loud roar that traversed across the entire eternal heaven realm. Everyone immediately leave this region, flee as far away as you possibly can. Protect the young generation. There is something strange going on with the power that originates from the heavenly law. The moment this lightning tribulation descends upon us, it will have enough power to obliterate a divine master. Flee at once. Enough power to obliterate a divine master. Those words were like thunderbolts that dropped from the highest of heavens, especially since the words had been uttered by the eternal heaven god emperor himself. The conferred god stage was immediately thrown into complete disarray. But just as the audience was about to flee, a loud explosion rang out in the sky. Within the pale white lightning domain, the white lightning dragon released a roar that sounded part dragon roar, part cry of heavenly wrath. After that it descended from the sky and entered the world of man. Space ripped apart like silk whenever it came into contact with the body of the dragon. It was as if the entire world was being chiseled into two halves from within. The might of heaven exploded forth, and everyone immediately felt as if countless mountains had been dropped on their backs. Fleeing was no longer an option, and maybe it had already been too late to even try by then. The eternal heaven god emperor took to the sky and let out a sharp yell. Gathered profound practitioners, listen to my orders. Focus all your power on sealing the conferred god stage. After the eternal heaven god emperor had given his order, the 7 eternal heaven guardians who were present immediately moved. Their bodies flickered as they arrived at the borders of the conferred god stage. They looked like twinkling stars streaking across the sky as blazing light radiated from their bodies. Profound energy that surged like the ocean was being released without hesitation. This profound energy soon formed an extremely strong sealing barrier. The eternal heaven guardians were, along with the star gods of the star god realm and the moon gods of the moon god realm, supreme existences which were second only to the 4 great god emperors within the eastern divine region. Every single one of them possessed the earth-shaking strength of a divine master. So one could well imagine just how strong a barrier forged by the combined power of all 7 of them was. Outside of the guardians themselves, all of the adjudicators in the area surged forward after receiving orders from Honorable Hui as they also sent their power into the barrier. Kayans, I'll be entrusting Meiyin and Yingyu to you. Everyone else follow me? Shui Qianheng took to the skies as soon as he could, the gathered divine sovereigns of the glazed light realm following closely behind him. Gathered elders to me. The rest of you, protect the younger disciples. Luo Shangchen bellowed in a deep voice as he led the gathered divine sovereigns and rushed forward. Luo Guxi did not follow after Luo Shangchen. Instead, she gave a toss of her robe as an invisible barrier formed around Luo Changsheng. The stronger you were as a profound practitioner, the better you would be able to feel the dreadfulness of this heavenly might. The strength of the 7 guardians was extremely terrifying, but compared to the heavenly power before them, everyone present could clearly feel a sense of powerlessness. And they knew that it was extremely possible that the 7 guardians would not be able to seal this pale white tribulation lightning. As a result, all of the gathered divine masters and divine sovereigns took action instead of retreating, as they poured all of the profound energy they could muster into the barrier. The isolation barrier, which was originally transparent, began to glow brightly with profound light as it squarely kept the area of conferred god stage tightly sealed within. Furthermore, this barrier contained all the profound energy of more than half the divine masters in the eastern divine region, as well as all the profound energy of countless divine sovereigns. What was forged from this was perhaps the strongest wall of despair ever formed in the history of the eastern divine region. The space which Yun Qi was confined in had become a world of calamity that was completely isolated from the outside. He raised his head up high and looked at the heavenly law lightning dragon that was descending from the heavens. This was the most dreadful oppressive might he had ever endured in his entire life, and it far exceeded anything that he recognized. It was to the extent that he did not have the slightest doubt that this power was enough to annihilate all the living creatures in existence. Yet, he did not feel the slightest bit of fear. On the contrary, a strange longing began to throb in the depths of his profound veins. In that single unblinking moment, the white lightning dragon reflected in his eyes had grown closer and closer. It inched closer and closer until it was practically within reach. Its enormous mouth yawning open, revealing countless teeth made of pale white lightning, before it violently bit down on Yun Qi's whole body. B-O-O-O-O! The lightning dragon descended to the earth, white light brilliantly filing the air. A pillar of white light rushed towards the heavens, piercing through space and the blue sky as it shot towards distant star regions that were yet unknown to man. Pale white lightning ruptured and exploded all across the confines of the conferred god stage. The barrier which was sealing the conferred god stage violently shook amidst explosive wails, and this alarmed all the divine masters such that they went pale with shock. This barrier concentrated all the strength of more than half the divine masters in the eastern divine region, yet it was actually shaking. Xianxia, the pale white tribulation lightning wailed explosively as it shook the sky. The might of the heavenly law continued to explode outwards, causing the space within the conferred god stage to become completely distorted before it started to rip and twist into countless fragments. The completely frenzied heavenly might was basically unable to keep itself confined within the conferred god stage, as it violently lashed out at its surroundings. Its attacks smashed against the barrier that was sealing the conferred god stage, causing the barrier to emit noises which sounded like wails of laments as it continued to shudder violently. This is... Shrouding Sky Realm King Lu Zhou firmly pressed both his hands into the barrier as the greatest expression of shock and alarm he had ever worn in his life appeared on his face. So this is truly the real might of the heavenly law, to think that it was actually so dreadful. How could this be possible? Shui Qianheng's pupils dilated as the vibrations and power that was transmitted to him caused both his arms to grow sore and numb. Fear and alarm raced around in his heart, and even when he mustered all his strength to regain his composure, he could not suppress that mounting sense of dread. Boom, boom. The power of the tribulation lightning exploded in waves, and the impacts caused by these explosions shook the barrier violently. It was at this moment that a crack exploded on the barrier which contained the might of more than half the divine masters in the eastern divine region. This crack was accompanied by an explosion which sounded like the very heavens themselves had ruptured. After that, the crack in the barrier began to spread with extreme speed. Wah, what? This scene was so alarming that it caused everyone's hearts to clench in fear. All the divine masters and divine sovereigns who were gathered in front of the barrier had looks of tense concentration on their faces. Vast and mighty profound energy surged forth once again, and no one held anything back this time around. But the crack still continued to swiftly spread, and the shaking that rocked the entire barrier was clearly getting more and more violent. Crack, with another huge explosion, a second crack that was shaped like a thunderbolt ruptured open. Shouts of alarm and fear filled the air to such an extent that they nearly suppressed the wailing of the thunder. The divine masters at the scene were so shocked that all color drained from their faces. They did not dare to look down on this berserking heavenly might in the slightest. Even if the guardians were in front of them, they still all took action again. But even though they all moved in unison, they were still unable to completely suppress this heavenly might. What was even more terrifying was that this core of the power that originated from the heavenly law was focused on the conferred God stage itself. The heavenly might that they were struggling with was only the excess power that radiated outwards. The heavenly law was not to be defied, and the might of heaven was not to be touched. But the heavenly law was, after all, indistinct and distant, so it was not until this very moment that they had personally experienced and gained a true understanding of just how terrifying the might of the heavenly law was. If the barrier collapsed, this heavenly might, which even the gathered divine masters and divine sovereigns could not contain, would truly be let loose into the world. And the results would be so disastrous it would not bear thinking about. "Let's take action," the Dragon Monarch said softly. At that moment, the Dragon Monarch, Eternal Heaven Divine Emperor, Brahma Heaven God Emperor, Star God Emperor, Moon God Emperor, and the 4 star gods and 4 moon gods who were present, all moved in unison as they took to the skies. A might which hid the sky and covered the earth descended down from the dome of heaven before it covered up the barrier. In an instant, the wind and clouds started to change. In the next instant, God Emperor Shishan had also appeared beside them in front of the barrier. He brought his vast power to bear, injecting boundless divine power into the barrier. Among the king realms, only Qianai Yinger had not taken any action. Even the gathered god emperors had been so shocked that their faces had lost color, but not a single trace of shock or fear could be seen on her own. She floated in the sky, high above, as she steadily fixed her gaze on the center of the conferred god stage. Her golden hair danced in the air, and the soft armor that she wore hugged bewitching curves which were even more alluring than that of a devil. However, the golden mask that she wore concealed her eyes and did not allow anyone to observe the light that was currently rippling in her beautiful eyes. The Dragon Monarch, the 4 god emperors of the Eastern Divine Region, God Emperor Shishin of the southern divine region, the 4-star gods, and the 4 moon gods all moved at the same time. The power they exerted together was so dreadful that it could completely flip the eastern divine region on its head. Under this power, which normal folk could not even imagine, the cracks in the barrier finally stopped spreading. The spirits of the gathered divine masters and divine sovereigns were greatly lifted, and they felt their hearts relax slightly. Gradually, the cracks began to slowly mend, and the shaking of the barrier had clearly grown much gentler than before. Just as everyone was about to breathe a great sigh of relief and completely regain their composure, an earth-shaking explosion suddenly rang out in the space between heaven and earth. Boom! The tribulation lightning within the conferred god stage completely exploded outwards as a white light, countless times more dense than the previous one, pierced through the heavens. In an instant, uncountable fine cracks appeared on the barrier which had just been made whole. Before the gathered divine masters and divine sovereigns even had time to panic, the barrier had ruptured and burst open. All of them flew backwards from the impact. It was as if they had been smashed by a heavy mallet. Shit. The collapse of the barrier meant that this entire eternal heaven god realm would be buried by tribulation lightning. Everyone's hearts plunged into a deep abyss, but in the very next instant, that absolutely dreadful heavenly might had actually disappeared. In fact, it had completely disappeared. The berserking white tribulation lightning had broken through the barrier, but it had not dissipated. Instead, it seemed to have been devoured by the very air itself, as it disappeared without a trace. Light and warmth that had not been felt in a long time radiated from the skies above. Everyone instinctively raised their heads to look, but what they saw was miles and miles of clear sky. The black clouds, which had just been blanketing the skies a moment before, had astonishingly, completely disappeared. Everything that had just happened had seemed like an illusion that had just been shattered. Everyone was rooted in place, and it was a long time before anyone came to their senses. The conferred god stage had vanished. In the area where the conferred god stage had previously been now lay an empty hole that was 150 kilometers wide. One could not see to the end of the pitch-black darkness of that empty hole. This bottomless abyss, that seemed to run through the entire eternal heaven god realm, was irrefutable proof that everything that had just happened was indeed not a dream. In the air above that empty hole, there remained the last bits of pale white lightning. The pale white lightning winnowed as it slowly receded, and the figure of a person could soon be clearly seen within that pale white lightning. The lightning receded until a face could clearly be seen by everyone who was present. Yun-Chi. Countless jaws dropped to the ground as they stuttered words that came from the depths of their souls. Yun-Chi's body was completely bare, and only that layer of white lightning, which seemed to be unwilling to dissipate fully, acted as clothes as it covered his entire body. Furthermore, there was not a single wound that could be seen on his entire body. His black hair had grown several times longer, and those long locks chaotically danced as they were illuminated by the lightning that played about his body. A deathly silence settled across the entire conferred god stage. ZZZT, ZZZZT, ZZZT, ZZZT. Yun-Chi's eyes shifted, and to everyone's astonishment, they could see pale white lightning flash and crackle in his pupils. He slowly lifted an arm as he pointed a finger wrapped in white lightning towards a pale white face. Luo Chang Sheng, let's go again. The entire place was dead silent, and no one responded to what had just happened. Everyone's eyes were filled with a deep fear. It was as if they were looking at a monster that should not even be able to exist in this world. Luo Changsheng's face was as white as a sheet as he stared dazedly at Yun-Chi. He barely responded to the words that were said to him. That dreadful heavenly might have even broken the courage of all the gathered divine masters and divine sovereigns, much less Luo Changsheng, who had just stepped into the divine king realm. Furthermore, Yun-Chi had actually survived despite being beset by this heavenly might. In fact, he was standing there, right before them in the flesh. Not a single person could bring themselves to believe what they were seeing. It was much easier for them to believe that the Yun-Chi currently in their vision was no more than a transient illusion. Luo Changsheng? Yun-Chi's voice boomed like muffled thunder, shaking the souls of countless trembling individuals. The fight between us still hasn't ended, so let's go. Luo Changsheng's pupils contracted and his lips faintly trembled. It looked as if he wanted to say something, but he could not make a single sound. Big brother Yun, put on some clothes first. It's so embarrassing I could die. The free-spirited and beautiful voice of a young girl clearly rang out in the air at this moment. This voice had an instantaneous effect, as it roused the souls of all who were present. In fact, it was as if a stream of clear and clean spring water had been poured into the chaotic and suffocated space. Shui Meiyan's coquettish shout stunned Xianxia, because it was only now that he realized that he was actually standing there buck-naked while facing every living being in the entire eastern divine region. His arm moved with lightning speed, and a new ice phoenix snow robe garbed his body immediately. The sleeves of his new robe were wildly fluttering in the air as pale white lightning continued to play around them. Even though Xianxia's skin was as thick as a city wall, and his soul had just gone through a transformation as well, he could not help but feel his face flush with heat. Shui Meiyan had not let out any ordinary shout. In fact, what she had released was the stainless soul sound that could cleanse one's heart and soul. This allowed everyone present to quickly recover from the fear and shock that had been evoked by both the tribulation lightning and seeing Xianxia emerge alive, respectively. The muscles on the eternal heaven god emperor's face were clearly twitching as he extended a hand towards where Xianxia was standing. But before he had completely extended his arm, he withdrew it and instead spoke with deeply furrowed eyebrows. "Xianxia, how are you still alive? How exactly did you survive that?" They had just personally experienced the true might of that white-colored tribulation lightning. The barrier that had been forged from the combined power of the gathered god emperors, divine masters, and divine sovereigns had been shattered by a single blow from that heavenly might. And that was just from the excess power that had spilled over. If one was located in the eye of the storm, the point at which all of that heavenly might was focused, the eternal heaven god emperor did not doubt in the least that even a divine master would have been instantly reduced to nothingness under that kind of power. As for Xianxia, he was only a divine tribulation realm profound practitioner. Furthermore, he had just been beaten within an inch of his life by Luo Changsheng. He had suffered such a terrible defeat at the hands of Luo Changsheng that he could not even retaliate. So just how then could he have survived that dreadful lightning tribulation? He was unable to bring himself to believe this. He was simply unable to believe that such a thing had happened, no matter how much he tried. But what was even greater than his disbelief was his inability to understand or reason out what had just transpired. Not only was Xianxia alive and kicking, he actually did not look the least bit hurt. The peerlessly dreadful 9-stage lightning tribulation was far too frenzied, and not more than 15 minutes had passed since the first stage of tribulation lightning had started until now. But before these 15 minutes had passed, it would have been hard-pressed to find a single uninjured part on his body. Within the short span of 15 minutes, even the divine water of absolute beginning or the great firmament golden pellet would not be able to heal a person to this extent. Also, that pale white lightning that played across his body. That was lightning that belonged the 9th stage of tribulation lightning, and the dreadfulness of that lightning still left a profound fear in the eternal heaven god emperor's heart. This pale white lightning, which had yet to dissipate, represented the highest level of heavenly might in this universe. Yet it had actually wrapped itself around Xianxia's body in an incomparably docile and meek fashion. Without even mentioning his actual body itself, even the snowy robes he had just donned had not suffered the slightest bit of damage. In fact, the lightning that played around his body only looked like ordinary light without any ability to kill or injure. But the moment the eternal heaven god emperor's eyes made contact with that white light, his heart and soul could not help but violently shake as fear and dread overtook him. Xianxia did not reply, and in fact he was unable to reply. The dragon monarch gave Xianxia a deep look before suddenly speaking. Xianxia and Luo Changsheng's battle was interrupted due to the lightning tribulation, and even though Luo Changsheng has already left the confines of the conferred god stage, that was due to an unavoidable and, dare I say, irresistible interference, so it cannot count as his defeat, which is also to say that this conferred god battle is not yet finished. The eyes of the eternal heaven god emperor shifted to the side as he said, "The esteemed dragon monarchs means to say? 9 tribulations descending from the heavens, that is something that has not happened even in ancient times. This proves that Xianxia's talent and potential is unique and unmatched. But compared to him alone, the final battle of this profound god convention is doubtlessly far more important. As for the rest of the details, let's leave them until later," the dragon monarch said in an incomparably calm and unperturbed voice. Every single one of the dragon monarch's words were as heavy as a boulder. The eternal heaven god emperor was briefly startled by those words, but after that, he gave a nod of understanding and assent before declaring in a deep voice, "Kui." Honorable Kui was ultimately still Honorable Kui. No matter what the circumstances were, he was a person that would follow the rules and regulations to their utmost limit. In a flash, he arrived before the area where the conferred god stage should have been. His hand pulsed with profound light, and a pure white barrier immediately formed under his feet. The barrier started to spread until it covered the 150-kilometer area that had made up the conferred god stage, covering up the empty space that had been created by the lightning tribulation. Just like that, an entirely new 150-kilometer conferred god stage had been created. Under the power of the Honorable Kui, this arena that had been formed by a profound energy barrier was far more sturdy than even the actual conferred god stage. Luo Changsheng, the battle between you and Yun Qi has not yet ended. Just now, the two of you were interrupted by that lightning tribulation. But now that the lightning tribulation has finished, both of you should continue from where you left off. Make haste and enter the arena. However, you can also choose to reject this suggestion, and if that is the case, it will be viewed as you abandoning the fight and admitting your defeat. The sonorous voice of Honorable Kui remained the same as ever, as he pronounced those words with a cold detachment. The shock that 9 stages of tribulation lightning had brought about was still fresh in everyone's mind, and still left them reeling from its impact. But before they could even catch a break and rouse themselves, their attention was now suddenly redirected back to the conferred god battle. However, these were the words and the decision of the Dragon Monarch and the Eternal Heaven God Emperor respectively. Moreover, all that had been said and done were within reason. At that moment, they remembered how Luo Changsheng had Yun Qi completely ground under his heel just a moment ago. To all who were present, that very real scenario now seemed much like a dream. Countless gazes turned toward where Luo Changsheng was, but he still stood there unmoving. "Luo Changsheng," Yun Qi said with narrowed eyes, his deep voice booming in the air, "it can't be that you don't dare to fight me, right?" These words had undoubtedly fiercely agitated Luo Changsheng. His blankly staring eyes fiercely regained their focus, and his chest rose and fell as his lips hooked up with the trace of a smile. "Me, afraid of you, Changsheng?" Luo Guxi grabbed him anxiously as she said in a low voice, "The lightning aura around Yun Qi is extremely bizarre, let's not make any hasty." Before Luo Guxi could even finish her statement, Luo Changsheng had already shrugged her off abruptly and taken to the skies. He flew across the distance and landed in front of Yun Qi. Both participants stared at each other, their gazes colliding. But unlike before, this time Luo Changsheng's eyes were involuntarily quivering, whereas Yun Qi's eyes were a sea of icy indifference. ZZZT, ZZZT, ZZZZT. The sound of the crackling lightning was exceptionally jarring to the ear. Luo Changsheng stood only 30 meters distant from Yun Qi, but the moment his eyes made contact with that pale white lightning, a sensation that felt as if 1,000 iron needles were stabbing into his soul ran through his body. What was even more bizarre than this was the fact that he actually could not sense Yun Qi's aura at all. Not only could he not sense his profound energy, he could not even sense the aura of his life force. Furthermore, it was not only him. Even his master Luo Guxi and the gathered god emperors themselves could not sense Yun Qi's aura. The layer of pale white lightning that covered his body had completely sealed off Yun Qi's profound energy and life force from detection, and even the spiritual perception of a divine master was unable to penetrate it. The rising and falling of Luo Changsheng's chest became more and more violent. His heart could not stop its frantic rhythm. It was beating so fast that it threatened to leap out of his chest. Not more than 15 minutes ago, he had completely dominated Yun Qi and had forced him to the edge of despair and desperation. Yun Qi had been his chew toy, but right now, his body and soul were being invaded by a dread he could not control. A gigantic difference in ability had naturally given birth to enormous humiliation. He was the Luo Changsheng who had become a divine king, the youngest divine king in the history of the entire Eastern divine region, the best and most incredible genius. So how could he display fear in front of a person who had just survived a lightning tribulation, someone he had been wantonly trampling all over just a moment ago? It was even more impossible for him to retreat or lose to this person. No matter what he could not, there was no reason for him to retreat or to lose. He steeled his nerves as he fiercely bit down on the tip of his tongue and forcefully straightened his back. He wore a bland smile on his face, the kind of smile that the strong showed in front of the weak. "Ah, Xianxia, you have once more given me an enormous and delightful surprise. Nine-stage lightning tribulation, magnificent, truly magnificent. Xianxia, I have no choice but to confess that you will very possibly be my superior in the future. But that's too bad, because that will be in the future." Luo Changsheng's lips drew back slightly to form the trace of a twisted grin. It was as if to tell Xianxia that it was a mystery whether he would even have a future. "But the current you? Let's not even talk about the 9-stage lightning tribulation. Even if it was 10 stages, no, 100 stages, you are still someone who has just survived his lightning tribulation and stepped into the divine spirit realm. So you surely can't be so naive as to think that the current you has the qualifications to be my opponent, correct?" Xianxia did not say a word, but a cold light that pierced one's marrow flashed in the depths of his cold eyes. Honorable Kui furrowed his brows before giving a wave of his hands. "The final battle of the conferred god battle hereby continues. The rules are the same as before. Begin." It was very clear that Luo Changsheng had managed to convince himself with what he had just said. The fact that Xianxia had just entered the divine spirit realm was a fact that became prominent and deeply embedded in Luo Changsheng's psyche. His gaze started to grow confident as he dismissively extended his hand towards Xianxia. "As a divine king, it's beneath my dignity to take the initiative to attack someone who has just entered the divine spirit realm. Come, attack me with all your power. Let me take a good look at just how much improvement you've made just now." Xianxia still did not say anything in response to Luo Changsheng. Instead, he slowly raised his hand and pointed a finger at him. "Zzzt?" A soft whinny of crackling lightning rang out in the air. A bolt of white lightning swiftly shot out of the tip of his finger, and in the next instant, that bolt of lightning pierced through Luo Changsheng's body. Luo Changsheng did not even react in time to that attack. He only felt a part of his chest grow cold. After that, an intense pain assaulted him. He involuntarily looked down, and to his surprise, he found a bloody hole in his chest, a bloody hole that ran all the way through his body. Luo Changsheng's pupils instantly contracted into pinpricks, and all the profound practitioners surrounding the conferred god stage were completely stunned by what had just happened. There had been no movement or surging of profound energy in the air. It had merely been a flash of lightning, yet Luo Changsheng's body had been pierced through. This was a divine king's spiritual perception and body we were talking about, yet Luo Changsheng did not even react, and the profound energy that protected his body seemed practically non-existent to that attack. In fact, it had not even made any sort of sound or struggle when it had been pierced. Fresh blood finally gushed out of that wound as Luo Changsheng gave a low moan and pressed with his hand. The bloody hole was not very big, and to a divine king, it was not even considered a serious wound. But this wound dealt a devastating blow to Luo Changsheng's heart and soul. Xianxia's finger made a slight movement as lightning flashed on the tips of fingers. Bang! Yet another bloody hole appeared on Luo Changsheng's body, this time piercing through the right side of his chest. Luo Changsheng let out a pained moan as he stumbled backwards. He once more felt the intense pain and the cold sensation of being pierced through, and his heart violently clenched in his chest. His spiritual perception still did not react to this attack, and the protective profound energy still seemed to put up no resistance whatsoever. "You!" He stared at Xianxia, his body actually involuntarily shivering. But his fear soon turned into humiliation before turning into an incomparably intense rage. He gave a low bellow as a gray light flashed. The dragon compassion blade appeared in his hand as the power of a divine king violently surged up in his entire body, and he sent a ferocious slash at Xianxia. In the previous bout against Xianxia, Luo Changsheng was afraid that he would accidentally inflict a fatal slash on Xianxia. So from the beginning to the end, he never used more than 30% of his power. But this particular slash was an attack that had been provoked by the formless dread, so it carried all of his explosive power as a divine king. The dragon compassion blade left chaotic dimensional ripples in its wake as it whistled through the air. If this was the Xianxia of 15 minutes ago, this attack would definitely kill him. But despite facing the all-out attack of Luo Changsheng, Xianxia did not move from where he was standing. Instead, he merely raised his right arm up slowly as he lightly opened his fingers to welcome the dragon compassion blade that was hurtling towards him as it slashed through the empty air. This scene was so shocking it caused everyone's heart to leap in their chests. "Xianxia, could it be that he wants to?" Yun Qi's actions caused Luo Changsheng's pupils to widen. With a low roar, the blade, which was full of the power of a divine king, actually grew fiercer by yet another degree. "You're looking for death." Qi's palm, but there was no profound energy explosion, collapsed space, or blood. All the impact produced was a hiss of lightning, and the blade came to a stop. Or more accurately, Yun Qi held it with 3 fingers, just like that. The devastating power of a divine king had vanished like it had been devoured by a dimensional black hole. The conferred god stage was completely silent. Luo Changsheng looked deathly pale as his pupils trembled with confusion and fear. His weapon arm felt numb, but he couldn't feel any power inside it. In fact, he couldn't even feel the dragon compassion blade itself. The dragon compassion blade had been injected with all of his power, but Yun Qi had stopped his attack barehanded, no, with just 3 fingers. "Impossible, impo-ssi bli." Yun Qi remained expressionless, almost as if he had caught a tiny insect and not a blade. Then he squeezed the dragon compassion blade a bit. Ding. There was a soft noise, and pale white cracks instantly spread throughout the blade. Luo Changsheng's pupils dilated until they couldn't possibly get any wider. Creak, 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 creak. Ayo, woo. The dragon compassion blade struggled and trembled intensely in Yun Qi's grip, all the while roaring fearfully and in pain. However, its futile struggles and sorrowful roars lasted for only a brief instant before it stilled and crumbled into countless gray-white pieces in Luo Changsheng's hand. The fragments fell to the light screen beneath their feet, shining with despair during its final moments before everything finally turned silent. You! Luo Changsheng staggered back a few steps while feeling numb all over. He felt as if someone had sucked the soul from his very body. Yun Qi took Luo Changsheng's dragon compassion blade with his bare hand. Not his hand, his fingers, he even crushed it. Was the dragon compassion blade such a fragile weapon? The dragon compassion blade was a primordial divine blade Fairy Guxi brought back from the god realm of absolute beginning. There's no way it'd be fragile, not to mention that it was injected with Luo Changsheng's powers, a divine king's powers. Yun Qi's the reason, Yun Qi, he, SSSS. Gasps could be heard all across the spectators' stands. Impossible. Luo Guxi looked completely stunned. If she was numb from the shocking event that was the lightning tribulation earlier, then she couldn't even believe her eyes right now. She had personally brought the dragon compassion blade back from the god realm of absolute beginning, and she had spent a tremendous amount of effort to retrieve the blade. Admittedly, it wasn't nearly as strong as it was during the primordial era, but the blade itself was still made using the back of an actual dragon. Not even she could have destroyed it so easily. How in the world had Yun Qi done it when he had just survived his tribulation lightning? Wait, that white tribulation lightning surrounding him. Changsheng, Luo Guxi suddenly shouted. If a lightning tribulation hadn't interfered with this battle, you would have been victorious a long time ago. This so-called rematch is unfair and completely meaningless to you, so you may as well just give up this fight. Luo Guxi was obviously giving Luo Changsheng a reason to surrender the match, but the words she used, unfair, completely meaningless, made Honorable Kui frown deeply. If she wasn't Luo Guxi, he would have shown his anger already. Give up, Luo Changsheng's lips were trembling, but no one knew if it was out of fear or humiliation. As he stared at the dragon compassion blade's broken fragments with a distorted expression, he said, "Are you kidding me? I've become a divine king. I thrashed him like a dog just moments ago. Do you think I'm afraid of him?" Luo Changsheng was the first 30-year-old divine king in the history of the Eastern Divine Region. Not only did this shock the entire Eastern Divine Region, it even won the admiration of the Divine Masters as well. It was such a proud and impressive achievement. 3 days ago, Yun Qi had handed him his very first defeat and shame of his entire life. He had ascended to a divine king, so he could vent all of his hatred and fury on Yun Qi to achieve peace of mind. Before the lightning tribulation had occurred, Yun Qi had seemed like a tiny worm that he could crush however he wished. Although he could have defeated Yun Qi easily, he had chosen to torture and trample all over his body and pried right at the conferred god stage before everyone's eyes. After all that he had done to Yun Qi, what would become of his reputation if he ran away now? He would become the biggest laughingstock of the entire Eastern Divine Region. How could he possibly accept this? Heh, Yun Qi finally said something, but it was only a sneer that had escaped his lips. The deeply ridiculing sneer seemed to pierce Luo Changsheng's already taut nerves deeply, because he suddenly roared and charged Xianxia like a frightened animal. His movements were as quick as lightning, as his hands were encircled by a devastating tempest. Xianxia remained still in the face of Luo Changsheng's renewed attack. Not even the curl on his face had changed in the slightest. "Don't touch the lightning surrounding his body," a panicked shout rang from the distance. It came from none other than Luo Guxi herself. Bang! Luo Changsheng's tempestuous powers slammed directly into Xianxia's chest, and the terrific power of a divine king exploded without reservation. However, it once again vanished into nothingness in the next instant. It was like a beautiful bubble that was popped easily with a single touch. Xianxia didn't move at all, despite taking the full brunt of Luo Changsheng's attack head-on. His sleeves were the only thing that moved a little due to the shockwave. Both of Luo Changsheng's arms froze in front of Xianxia's chest. His pupils were dilating, and his entire body was shaking badly. Impossible, impossible, wah! Before Luo Changsheng could retrieve his soul from the abyss, a blood-curdling scream abruptly escaped his lips. Due to the physical contact, the white lightning surrounding Xianxia's body had abruptly crawled through his arms and spread across his entire body. He felt as if he had suddenly sunk into a terrible, invisible cage. Every part of his body was bound firmly by an irresistible power. As lightning continued to hiss beside his ears, a numbness so terrible that it was cruel spread to his organs. His veins, his profound veins, his cells, his pores. White light flashed repeatedly on Luo Changsheng's body. The lightning had not only robbed him of his strength and the ability to control his own body, but it also made him spasm violently. The only thing he could feel right now was a numbness so painful he wished he was dead. "This is the divine king power you pride yourself in?" Xianxia sneered disdainfully. "How disappointing." Xianxia slowly stretched out his hand and grabbed Luo Changsheng by the throat. His movement was very slow, but Luo Changsheng was unable to struggle or back off at all due to the lightning. Like a herd animal whose bones were completely crushed, he was easily lifted into the air by Xianxia. Luo Changsheng could only spasm in Xianxia's hands. Forget struggling, he couldn't even let out a normal sound. Xianxia's arm moved higher and higher as he stared at Luo Changsheng coldly. "Luo Changsheng, you are an impressive genius in the way of the profound. If a lightning tribulation hadn't suddenly descended upon me, I wouldn't have been a match for you at all. You could have beaten me fair and square with the power you possess, and I would have accepted this defeat without any complaints. But you just had to show me that ugly side of yours, didn't you? It was so ugly I felt like puking just now." Xianxia had always been a vengeful person. He always repaid those who treated him kindly, and he always paid back those who offended him 10 times over. The moment he said this, Xianxia tossed Luo Changsheng into the air. The latter screamed terribly. Xianxia extended his right arm as a bolt of pale white lightning cut through the air. The moment it entangled itself around Luo Changsheng's body, Xianxia swung his arm, and by extension, Luo Changsheng, downward and watched as Luo Changsheng was smashed violently against the ground. Bang, the downward momentum was unbelievably powerful. It was to the point where even the barrier was shaking a little. The rope of lightning binding Luo Changsheng had even tightened the instant he hit the floor, sinking into his flesh cruelly and drawing a hoarse, despairing roar. "Changsheng!" Luo Guxi's eyes instantly widened to the point of breaking. Xianxia raised his arm again, and the rope of lightning lifted Luo Changsheng high up into the air in response. Once again, he swung his opponent against the floor. Bang! This throw was even stronger than the one before, and new bloody furrows were carved into Luo Changsheng's flesh. Xianxia's lips curled slightly as he rumbled in a low tone. "You must have had a lot of fun when you threw me around earlier, didn't you, Luo Changsheng? In that case, I don't mind lending you a hand and giving you an experience so pleasurable you won't forget it for the rest of your life." Bang! The rope of lightning was swung once more, and this time Luo Changsheng landed head first on the ground. The sound of impact was as heavy as thunder, and it was accompanied by a shocking burst of blood. Bang, 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 bang. Right now, the son of the Holy Eve's realm king, the strongest god-child of the Eastern divine region, and the first ever genius who had become divine king at 30 years old, was tied to a rope like some pitiful grasshopper and slammed to the ground repeatedly. Every swing was so powerful that hearts trembled, and every time Luo Changsheng hit the ground, blood splattered everywhere as his flesh became mutilated. It was so cruel that most profound practitioners were looking away in shock and fear. Nearly no one pitied Luo Changsheng, however. Earlier, Luo Changsheng could have sent Yun Qi out of bounds with a finger after Yun Qi had lost all ability to resist. But he hadn't. Instead, he had started trampling, torturing, and humiliating Yun Qi like he had gone completely mad. He had become a most terrifying Luo Changsheng that none of them had ever seen before. Now that the tables were flipped, Yun Qi's bloody revenge against Luo Changsheng was practically justice. Bastard! Fiend! Luo Guxi was shaking all over and gritting her teeth so hard that they threatened to break. Her hands were clenched so hard that they had started bleeding a while ago. As Luo Changsheng's master, she had trained him strictly, but also showered him with love. She could never bear to scold or hit Changsheng even when he grew lazy or had committed some terrible mistakes. But now, she was forced to watch Luo Changsheng being abused right in front of everyone's eyes and do nothing about it. The splattering blood and hoarse, blood-curdling screams felt like cruel demons who were chewing at her very heart and soul. Luo Shangchen was also gripping his hands tightly with bloodshot eyes. Bang, 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 bang. Luo Changsheng hadn't taken out Yun Qi because he wanted to vent his dark emotions on him. So Yun Qi made sure to return the favor in an even crueler fashion. The rope of lightning both preserved Luo Changsheng's life and made sure that he wouldn't faint out of pain or humiliation. Its electrical power constantly stimulated Luo Changsheng's mind so that the latter had no choice but to suffer all the pain and humiliation that was inflicted upon him in the clearest of mind. As the thunderous slams continued, Luo Changsheng became mutilated beyond recognition. The outer garment Luo Guxi had just changed for him, personally, was completely torn and drenched in blood, giving him the appearance of someone who had just emerged from a literal bloodbath. His screams grew more and more hoarse and despairing. It was to the point where some people couldn't stand listening to it any longer and sealed off their hearing. It was at this moment that something unexpected occurred. Crack! There was the sound of breaking space, and a condensed but absolutely deadly storm flew towards Yun Qi while being accompanied by a rancorous and murderous growl. Die, fiend! It was Liu Gu Zai. The unexpected attack caught everyone by surprise. You dare! The deafening shouts came from Eternal Heaven God Emperor and Dragon Monarch, respectively. For the first time, Kaianai Yinger's expression changed drastically, because everyone was paying attention to the conferred God stage. No one had expected a famous divine master, and the strongest, most respected practitioner of the Eastern Divine Region to suddenly attack a junior during the Eastern Divine Region's most important ceremony. At this point, the word surprising could hardly fit her action. It was an utterly insane action that disregarded the pride of a divine master, the honor of the profound way, and mocked the eternal heaven and the Eastern Divine Region itself. Luo Guxi was not in the least an ordinary character. Because she was gripped by violent anger, she had used between 70 to 80% of her strength when she fired the attack. Needless to say, it was enough power to destroy an entire continent, and not something a Yun Qi or a million Yun Ches could block at all. He would undoubtedly be destroyed until not a speck of him was left in this world. But the storm was too swift, and Luo Guxi had attacked when everyone had least expected it. Not even the Dragon Monarch or the God Emperors were able to stop her in time. The only one who could block the attack was Honorable Kui, the closest person to Yun Qi. But, bang! There was a loud noise, and Honorable Kui was knocked back by the shockwave before he could even get close. Countless cracks appeared all over his right arm. Honorable Kui let out a dull, painful grunt, but there was nothing else he could do except to watch the terrible storm fly straight towards Yun Qi, about to murder the unparalleled genius whose ascension had summoned the most shocking 9 tribulations of the world. Yun Qi turned around slightly. Surprisingly, there was no fear on his face at all. The rope of lightning binding Luo Changsheng abruptly loosened, and Yun Qi suddenly swung his right arm straight at the incoming storm. The pale white lightning that had entangled him all this time suddenly pulled free and charged straight towards the storm, roaring like a living lightning dragon. A divine master's power was terrifying. It was enough to suppress divine kings and divine sovereigns to the point where their bodies and souls would collapse. Forget about struggling or resisting, even lifting a finger would be extremely difficult. Yet Yun Qi had actually made an instantaneous reaction, and that counterattack seemed to have been made without any suppression at all. But this was Luo Guxi's power he was dealing with, so his counter seemed to be as pathetic and powerless as a leaf caught in a tornado. The lightning dragon's cry resounded through space as it met the tornado head-on. The moment the two powers came into contact with each other, the space in that area exploded and fractured in an exaggerated fashion. Following that, an extremely shocking event was reflected in everybody's eyes. The lightning dragon had torn apart the tornado as it ripped through it in a single pass. Wah, what? This scene caused the jaws of countless profound practitioners to fiercely hit the ground. This was a windstorm generated by the power of a divine master. Furthermore, this was no ordinary divine master. It was a late-stage divine master who stood at the very peak of the profound way. Moreover, in order to not hurt Luo Changsheng, the radius of this attack had been compressed to its very limit, but its penetration and killing power were definitely capable of piercing straight through a small star. Yet this attack had actually been torn apart by the lightning dragon Yun Qi had flung out. What was even more dreadful than that was the fact that the tornado did not split into two separate explosions and engulf the surrounding area. Instead, after it was ripped apart and passed through by that pale white lightning dragon, it had begun to dissipate and fall apart. Before the pale white lightning dragon could be torn apart, the tornado which came from Luo Guxi vanished without a trace, with not a single shred of its power remaining. The eternal heaven god emperor and the dragon monarch who had been hurtling forward with all their might both came to a simultaneous halt as their faces colored with a hard-to-come-by shock. The pale white lightning dragon which tore apart that storm force astonishingly did not look like it had weakened at all. It was still as swift as lightning as it hurtled towards Luo Guxi. The latter had attacked in rage, and she originally believed that Yun Qi was already deader than dead. She could never have imagined that things would unfold the way they did, and was thus caught completely unprepared by this turn of events. She simply stared at the onrushing attack with a dumbstruck look on her face, as she was struck in the chest by the white lightning dragon, Sizz. Pale lightning exploded as Luo Guxi's chest and back exploded at the same time. A divine master's protective profound energy was the pinnacle of defensive power in this world, but it instantly wilted away in the face of that attack. The pale white lightning dragon passed through her body and soared toward the heavens, disappearing from everyone's view in the next instant. Boo! In the distant sky above, an enormous lightning domain exploded, and under the white light which filled the sky, an incomparably huge dimensional black hole appeared. The entire eternal heaven god realm started to shake violently. It shook for many breaths before the white lightning, and the dimensional black hole in the sky disappeared. This scene was just like when that heavenly might had descended into this world, and that pale white lightning had also been composed of that most dreadful heavenly might. A hole around half an inch wide appeared in Luo Guxi's chest. Her face stiffened into a mask, and her eyes were dark and gloomy as she lowered her gaze to stare fixedly at the enormous hole in her chest. It was as if her soul had left her body. Everyone's eyes were glued to that hole as well. The entire world was cloaked in a deathly, terrifying silence. PFFFFFF? Blood suddenly spurted out wildly from that wound like a geyser, and in the blink of an eye, Luo Guxi's upper body was dyed in blood. Luo Guxi's eyes lost their color as she plummeted to the ground below. Gu Guxi? It was as if Luo Shangchen had suddenly roused himself from a nightmare as he soared towards her plummeting figure, the distinguished Holy Eve's realm king nearly stumbling in his haste to go over. Ah! How can this be? Fairy Guxi? Actually. Luo Shangchen grabbed a hold of the falling Luo Guxi as he released all of the profound energy in his body and sent it surging into her body. At the same time, he also used his profound energy to cover up that incomparably dreadful wound in the most careful manner. Luo Guxi's eyes held a slackness that Luo Shangchen had never seen before. It seemed like she had descended into the most absurd and dreadful nightmare as her aura flowed around her entire body in a frenzied manner. Shang! She muttered in a lost and dispirited voice before her body shuddered, and she fainted dead away. Ma's master! Luo Changsheng let out a painful wail as he struggled to his knees on the barrier that made up the profound god stage. A dreadful silence lingered around the conferred god stage. The impact of all the events that had just unfolded in front of their eyes was nearly as great as the impact of that world-shocking 9-stage lightning tribulation. Luo Guxi, who stood at the peak of the eastern divine region, had suddenly made an attack against Yun Qi, a junior who had just broken into the divine spirit realm, who had not even reached the age of 30. Yet the lightning dragon counterattack Yun Qi launched had actually torn apart the tornado Luo Guxi threw at him, and even dealt her a severe blow afterwards. All of the most ridiculous and inexplicable things that they had seen in their entire lives added up together still would not equal that one instance in which all of these events unfolded. That was the power of the heavenly law. It was the heavenly might that assailed us just now. Head of the heavenly mystery, three elders, Mo Yu, said in a trembling voice. He actually gained mastery over the heavenly might which appeared previously. The power that Yun Qi had used to severely wound Luo Guxi was definitely not his own. It was actually a small remnant of the tribulation lightning sent down by the heavenly law that Yun Qi had forcefully retained before it dissipated like it was supposed to. What Master Mo Yu said was true, and his words was not the least bit exaggerated. Even though it had only been for a very short span of time, Yun Qi did indeed control the power of heavenly law. Furthermore, that power belonged to the highest levels produced by the heavenly law. Just what kind of notion was controlling the power of the heavenly law? The ones who did not understand would be bewildered, but those who did understand would be deeply shaken to the very core of their being. The various great god emperors glanced at one another as they saw the deep shock violently quivering in each other's eyes. After that, they all seemed to recall something as they simultaneously swiveled to look at Yun Qi. Yun Qi's face was unbelievably calm and unperturbed, as if what he had just done was a minor event that was surpassingly common. The pale white lightning that covered his body had completely disappeared, and the aura which had caused a formless dread to grip the hearts of the gathered god emperors vanished along with it. Without the pale white lightning covering him, Yun Qi's profound aura was finally completely revealed. Divine Spirit Realm, Rank 5? Mu Bingyun muttered softly in a slightly dazed voice. 5th level of the Divine Spirit Realm. The brows of the Eternal Heaven God Emperor dramatically jumped as he exclaimed those words. The surprises that Yun Qi kept giving others were simply far too great. There were so many that it left those onlookers numb. At this moment, everyone present was very clear on one fact, and that was the fact that Yun Qi was a freak who could not be explained using common sense. But at this moment, the profound aura that he was displaying still caused everyone present to gasp in astonishment. When a profound practitioner survived his lightning tribulation and broke out of the divine tribulation realm, his cultivation would naturally progress to the first level of the divine spirit, the initial starting point of a whole new realm. But Yun Qi, who had just survived his lightning tribulation, was actually giving off a profound aura that put him at the 5th level of the divine spirit realm. With a single step, he had gone from the 9th level of the divine tribulation realm to the middle stages of the divine spirit realm. This was something that completely went against all common sense and logic concerning the profound way, and it was something that had definitely never happened before. This kid is far more than just a monster, Shui Qianheng murmured to himself. As the glazed light realm king, he was definitely one of the top 5 personages in the entire eastern divine region outside the king realms. But even he did not think he would be Luo Guxi's opponent. Yet he had just personally seen that reputedly unrivaled Luo Guxi suffer a severe wound in just a single attack from Yun Qi, and had witnessed her fall from the sky and lose consciousness from that attack. He had attracted a 9-stage tribulation lightning, but he wasn't dead. On the contrary, he was completely healed, and his profound energy had risen all the way to the 5th level of the divine spirit realm. Shui Qianheng muttered again and again in his head. What the FCK is this guy? A demon? A devil? A god? A ghost? At any rate, there's no way this guy is human. My god, just what is this monster Snow Song realm came by? Huo Ruli said with wide open eyes. To severely wound the strongest profound expert of the eastern divine region in one strike, 5th level of the divine spirit realm. Yan Juhai shook his head powerfully, no longer able to form words. Meanwhile, Kayana Yinger's chest heaved as she let out a long sigh of relief. A chilly voice slipped out between her lips. That damn woman nearly destroyed my plans. In the distant clouds above, color had returned to Jasmine's face, but she did not look at Yun Qi anymore. Instead, she simply closed her eyes. When that world-shocking lightning tribulation had descended from the heavens, if there had been a single person who was not the least bit worried that Yun Qi would be buried in that lightning tribulation, it was Jasmine, because she was the person who was the most clear about the secrets that Yun Qi's body hid. What was the power of the heavenly law? It was the most basic power of order and laws in the primal chaos dimension. All things and living creatures which wanted to exist within this primal chaos dimension had to be under the control of the power of the heavenly law. This did not only include all the myriad creatures and spirits that existed today, but even the true gods of the primordial era were also unable to go against the heavenly law. However, there was a type of existence that sat above the heavenly law, the creation gods. Heaven-punishing divine Emperor Ma, the creation god of order Zai Qi, the creation goddess of life Li Xiu, and the god formerly known was the creation god of elements, the evil god. The reason why the heavenly law would shake with fear, and would not hesitate to send the most extreme 9-stage lightning tribulation to obliterate Xianxia, was because his human body housed the power of a creation god. For mortal men to cultivate into gods, even touching the divine way in the most minor of ways, would provoke the censure of the heavenly law, much less someone who held the true power of a creation god. If Xianxia's body had held the power of any of the other 3 creation gods, even if he held the power of the strongest creation god, the heaven-punishing divine Emperor Ma, he would definitely have been buried within that lightning tribulation. But Xianxia just had to possess the power of the evil god. The evil god was formerly known as the creation god of elements, so he had possessed the most extreme and primal elemental power. The heavenly law was supreme, and the higher levels of the lightning tribulation were things that humans should not be able to touch. But it definitely was not higher than the elemental power which belonged to the evil god. Forget about a 9-stage lightning tribulation. Even if it was pure tribulation lightning, even if it was 900 or 9,000 stages, it would not be able to harm a single hair on Xianxia's head. On the contrary, the great way of the Buddha has evolved again, Jasmine muttered. He reached the 5th stage in less than 12 years. He has completely surpassed you, big brother. She didn't know whether she should be happy for him or afraid. His strength might have grown drastically like he had been reborn thanks to the 9 stages of tribulation lightning, but he also shone much too brightly as a result. He was so bright that the world could never forget about him. It meant that he could not return to calm any longer. He could not return to the blue pole star anymore. Xianxia's great way of the Buddha had achieved a breakthrough thanks to the tribulation lightning. Ever since the great way of the Buddha had entered the 4th stage back in the primordial profound arc, it hadn't undergone a drastic change, even though it still improved his physical strength slowly. Back at the blue pole star, he had thought that its growth had been restricted by the plane he was in, but he still wasn't able to achieve a breakthrough after he came to the God realm. Xianxia had noticed the bottleneck that prevented him from ascending any further than the 4th stage of the Great Way of the Buddha a long time ago. But he was unable to achieve a breakthrough despite many years of hard work. But when the heavenly tribulation lightning struck him for the first time, the bottleneck of the Great Way of the Buddha that had persisted for several years instantly cracked under pressure. It was all due to the high-level heavenly laws and heavenly spirit energy. When the 7th tribulation lightning had dropped on his head, the bottleneck was finally shattered as the Great Way of the Buddha officially entered its 5th stage. The 5th stage of the Great Way of the Buddha didn't just absorb normal world spiritual energy. It was now capable of absorbing the energy of the heavens themselves. Normally, heavenly spirit energy exists very thinly in this world, but it was the opposite when a heavenly tribulation lightning was involved. The final stage of the tribulation lightning, especially, was the highest level of power the heaven possessed. His newfound rage god power madly absorbed the heavenly power and pushed his profound energy all the way from the 1st level of the divine spirit realm to the 5th. If the power of the heavenly law persisted as it was, then it was only a matter of time before he reached the divine king realm. Xianxia raised his hands and inhaled slightly, feeling out his own power. Every time it climbed to a whole new realm, every time the Great Way of the Buddha had risen to a new level, his perception of the world would change drastically. So one might say that both of them occurring at once was a world-scale eye-opener for him. Divine Spirit Realm. He had made it through all of the foundations of the Divine Way, Divine Origin, Divine Soul, Divine Tribulation, and had officially taken the first step into the Divine Way. Everyone felt like they were dreaming, but Xianxia had to admit that it was the same for him. But it wasn't the time for emotions just yet. A blood-drenched Luo Changsheng was slowly getting up to his feet, and the man was boiling with wrath and killing intent. Xianxia, Luo Changsheng's voice was so hoarse that he sounded like a beast whose throat had been ripped from its body. When the pale white lightning left Xianxia's side, gone was the aura that frightened him from the bottom of his heart too. Now all he could sense was a divine spirit aura. He could no longer feel any pressure from Xianxia. I will make you wish you were dead. Without the power of the heavenly law covering his body, Yun Qi's aura was instantly and completely suppressed by Luo Changsheng. Luo Changsheng's entire body was covered in blood, but he virtually felt no pain. No matter whether it was his body or his soul, the only things he felt were extreme rage and humiliation which threatened to boil over. He gave a furious roar as a green light flashed across his body, and a gigantic whirlwind coalesced around him. The wind energy swiftly gathered around his right arm before he sent it smashing towards Yun Qi's chest. This unrestrained blow was definitely one that sought to rob Yun Qi of his life. Yun Qi's face was expressionless, but rumbling heaven instantly opened, and the suddenly rampaging profound energy completely suppressed Luo Changsheng's aura as his claw-like hand shot out with lightning speed. Bang! A huge explosion rang out in the air as energy waves exploded around the two, and the space around them trembled in the wake of their clash. Luo Changsheng came to a complete halt, his entire body stiffening. The right arm, which was filled with the greatest power he could muster, had actually been grabbed by Yun Qi. It was as if his power was smashing against an impregnable rock that soared towards the heavens. The aftershock left his entire body numb, but Yun Qi was practically unmoved by his own attack. Luo Changsheng's pupils contracted, and it seemed as if he had fallen into a deep abyss. His palm felt like it was being bound by profound steel, and even if he caused all of the profound energy in his body to surge, he still could not struggle out of that grip. "Your strength isn't bad," Yun Qi said as he looked at him through slitted eyes. "To think that you actually caused my hand to feel the slightest bit of pain. Heh, that's worthy of praise." Those words were very familiar to Luo Changsheng because they were clearly the mocking words he had cast at Yun Qi when he had blocked the heaven-smiting sword with his bare hands. As those words fell, Yun Qi made a light movement with his hand. Crack! The sound of bone breaking resounded clearly in everyone's ears as all the finger bones in Luo Changsheng's right hand instantly broke apart. He let out an ear-splitting cry as his right knee heavily smacked against the ground and his entire body spasmed violently in agony. Crack! Yun Qi's gaze was cold and merciless. As his palm twitched yet again, the finger bones, which were already broken, immediately turned to powder. Even his forearm had been mercilessly shattered by that movement. Luo Changsheng's entire body shuddered, and his pale white face actually turned a greenish purple. He desperately used all his might to move his energy and send it surging into his nerveless right arm. A bang loudly rang out in the air as Luo Changsheng was sent flying into the distance as he finally escaped Yun Qi's vise-like grip. But the throbbing pain coming from his right arm caused his entire body to drench itself in sweat as it shuddered. His originally beautiful and flawless face was distorted into a demonic visage. "Just this much strength, and you want me to wish I was dead?" Yun Qi gave a cold, mocking laugh. Under normal circumstances, his divine spirit realm aura would naturally be completely suppressed by Luo Changsheng's divine king realm aura. But when he was under the effects of rumbling heaven, he instead completely and totally suppressed Luo Changsheng. So even if he did not rely on that heavenly might, which was only available to him for a short period of time, he still did not feel the least bit threatened by Luo Changsheng. It's not possible." Luo Changsheng's entire body shivered uncontrollably as his eyes, which beheld Yun Qi, were filled with a deep shock and fear. "You clearly just survived a lightning tribulation, and you're clearly only at the divine spirit realm. This isn't possible." Yun Qi let out a low laugh as he slowly extended a hand towards Luo Changsheng, but he did not even bother to take out the heaven-smiting sword. "Didn't you say that you wanted me to wish that I was dead? Come, use all of your tricks and methods. Like that heart-burning lightning of yours that will shorten your own life, use all of them. Just let me see how capable the youngest divine king in the history of the God realm, the grand and famous young Master Changsheng, truly is." Every word uttered by Yun Qi cruelly mocked Luo Changsheng. Every word agitated his soul, which was already close to collapse. At this moment, Luo Shangchen, who was using all his might to staunch Luo Guxi's wound, raised his head and let out a loud yell. "Changsheng, don't fight with him anymore. He's completely different than he was before. You won't be able to beat him." Now that he was pushed to such desperate straits, how could Luo Changsheng, whose heart was filled with hatred and shame, be willing to give up? He fiercely sucked in a breath of air as he let out a loud yell, his left hand shining with bizarrely colored lightning before he resolutely thrust it towards his own chest. He had, astonishingly enough, not hesitated to use the heart-burning lightning, which burned one's lifespan in order to increase one's profound strength. But it was at this moment that a mocking cold light flashed in the depths of Yun Qi's eyes. Boom! Yun Qi's figure suddenly disappeared, and he instantly appeared like a ghost in front of Luo Changsheng as a cluster of golden flames fiercely exploded against his chest. Under the explosive flames, Luo Changsheng spat out an arrow of blood and was once more sent flying into the distance. When he finally landed on the ground, the wound, which had already been sliced apart by lightning previously, completely ruptured as a cloud of blood slowly spread around his body. Luo Changsheng knelt to the ground limply, his face a ghastly white, and his entire body was spouting blood. The heart-burning lightning that he had used his blood essence to evoke had completely dissipated as well. "I seem to have suddenly changed my mind," Yun Qi said in a relaxed tone as he walked towards Luo Changsheng at a leisurely pace. "But please do not misunderstand. It's not that I'm afraid of your heart-burning lightning. It's just that I want you to understand something." Yun Qi's finger drew an arc in the air as he pointed his right hand at Luo Changsheng and coldly declared, "Luo Changsheng, the current you that stands before me is nothing more than a pitiful toy that I can toss around at my own leisure. If I want you to use a power, then you can use that power. If I do not want you to use that power, then you can forget about ever using it, understand? Or perhaps you could immediately admit your defeat and surrender right now in front of me. After all, even though a defeated dog is ugly to look at least you can save yourself a lot of pain. Don't you think?" A large mouthful of fresh blood fiercely sprayed from Luo Changsheng's mouth as his body continued to shudder. His previous mocking, insulting, and humiliating words were all thrown back, unchanged, into his teeth by Yun Qi. Even though he was facing the same methods and the same words to Luo Changsheng, this was undoubtedly many times, no, even tens of times more humiliating than it had been for Yun Qi. "UK?" It seemed as if a frenzied and vicious beast had entered Luo Changsheng's chest, as it rose and fell with such intensity that it looked like it would explode at any moment. His eyes were filled with confusion and disorder, but there finally came a moment when his eyes completely lost all focus, and Luo Changsheng himself had lost all reason. All of the wounds on his body split open, and his entire person seemed like a desperate and hopeless wild beast as he rushed towards Yun Qi with an ear-splitting cry. If it was before today's events, no one would be able to believe that Luo Changsheng could be reduced to his present state. He was, after all, Luo Changsheng, the young master Changsheng who stood at the head of the 4 god children of the eastern region. All of the humiliation he had inflicted previously had been returned to him 10 times over. His strength as a divine king had been trampled over in the blink of an eye. The master that he was most proud of had not hesitated to throw away her dignity as a divine master to protect him, but she was wounded by the counterattack. His body, his strength, his pride, his glory, all of his dignity. All of this had been trampled under Yun Qi's feet and kicked into a deep abyss. He had finally collapsed. The onrushing Luo Changsheng had seemed to completely morph into a vicious man-eating beast. Even his profound energy had been thrown into complete chaos. This Luo Changsheng was not even fit to be Yun Qi's opponent. If there was one thing more dreadful than striking one's life, it was striking one's heart. Yun Qi deliberately looked away, so he would not need to look at the current Luo Changsheng any further. He waved his hand, and all of a sudden, the crackle of electricity was emitted from his hand as deep purple lightning flashed from his palm to explode towards Luo Changsheng. Lightning! The purple light in Yun Qi's hand caused countless profound practitioners present to widen their eyes in astonishment. As a wail ripped through the air, Luo Changsheng was wrapped up by a couple dozen lightning bolts and heavily thrown to the ground. At this moment, Yun Qi flew into the air before making a sudden descent, his right foot smashing viciously into Luo Changsheng's left arm. Crack! UWA! Ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch! The sound of bones fracturing was practically as harsh as the wail of lightning, as all of the bones in Luo Changsheng's left arm were instantly reduced to dust. Following that, he let out a wail of despair which seemed to come from the depths of hell itself. Changsheng! Luo Shangshen's body violently shook as his pupils widened so much that they threatened to rupture. Lightning, to think Yun Qi can actually use the power of lightning as well, the eternal heaven god emperor said. Ice, fire, lightning, to think that he was actually the same as Luo Changsheng, someone able to cultivate 3 different kinds of elemental profound powers. That isn't any ordinary lightning either, the dragon monarch said in a soft voice. Could it be that you haven't noticed that the lightning that he is using carries the aura of tribulation lightning? What? The eternal heaven god emperor was absolutely stunned by that declaration. After that, his gaze grew tightly focused, and a deep shock suddenly appeared on his face. Perhaps he was able to comprehend some of the principles of the tribulation lightning sent down by the heavenly law while he was trapped inside the lightning tribulation, the dragon monarch said contemplatively. Due to the limitations of his profound strength, he should only be able to use the lowest grade purple tribulation lightning. But if he is able to fully comprehend the principles of the tribulation lightning sent down by the heavenly law, and his profound strength reaches a sufficient level, perhaps, he may be able to release that white tribulation lightning. The eternal heaven god emperor was rendered speechless by those words for a good long while. The white-colored tribulation lightning, which could shatter the barrier that had been forged by the profound strength of all of the divine masters present. The white-colored tribulation lightning, which severely wounded Luo Guxi in a single instant. If such a day truly came, then who under the heavens could be Yun Qi's opponent? Wait just a minute. The tribulation lightning that was sent down by the heavenly law. This was the principles of the very heavenly law itself. How could any human be able to comprehend such a thing? How could any human be able to understand it completely? Yun Qi's right foot was firmly planted on Luo Changsheng's shattered left arm, but his gaze was directed into the distant white skies above. He did not even bother to give Luo Changsheng's pale and distorted face a single look as he coldly declared, "Luo Changsheng, we were originally no more than simple opponents. Yet you just had to force me to become your enemy. Heh, that's right, you are the scion of the Holy Eve's realm king and the disciple of Luo Guxi. There is no one that you need fear, and all along, it has only been the other way around. Whether you wanted to trample over anyone was up to your whims and fancy, but it's a pity that I just happen to be someone who is fearless. The moment I get offended, I'll need a long time to forgive the person who offended me. So no matter where I appear in the future, I don't care if you're young master long life or young master short life, you better tuck in your tail and behave in front of me." With that, Yun Qi lifted up his leg and viciously stomped on Luo Changsheng's head. Bang! As the barrier violently shook and sunk in slightly, Luo Changsheng's entire head had been stomped into the barrier. Luo Changsheng's entire body spasmed as his four limbs furiously twitched before they went completely limp. There was no movement after that. At practically the same instant, Honorable Kui let out a roar which shook the air. "Luo Changsheng has fainted. Yun Qi is the victor of this battle." As Honorable Kui's voice fell, the profound god stage broke out into an uproar, but there was no one cheering for Yun Qi. At this moment in time, everyone present had nearly forgotten that this was not simply a duel between Yun Qi and Luo Changsheng. This was also the final battle of the conferred god battle. Yun Qi's leg flew up and kicked Luo Changsheng far in the direction of where the Holy Eve's realm was sitting. After that, he turned around and said, "As such, I can assume that I have taken the first place in this profound god convention, correct?" "Of course." Honorable Kui slowly nodded his head. "And it's not only this profound god convention either. In any of the profound god conventions held by our Eastern Divine Region, you would still undoubtedly, and most deservedly have taken first place as well." These extremely flattering words were actually said by Honorable Kui with a resolute sureness. On the other side, Luo Shangchen had taken to the skies, as well as he caught the unconscious Luo Changsheng in his arms. This profound god convention should have been the tournament where Luo Changsheng lorded over the young generation of the Eastern Divine Region. Before the conferred god battle had begun, he was recognized by all as the profound god #1, and no one could truly vie with him for the top. Yet he had lost to Yun Qi. In order to recover from his setback and the loss of dignity, he had lifted his restrictions and become a divine king, shocking the entire Eastern Divine Region. So this time, no one had believed that he could lose. There had not been even a dint of possibility that he would lose. Yet he had lost yet again. Not only had he lost, he had been completely destroyed. Not only did he lose in a contest of profound strength, but all of the fame, prestige, and dignity he had accrued to his name had been completely trampled. Luo Shangchen breathed in a deep breath as his entire body tightened up, and for the first time in his life, he felt a dense, killing intent surge up in his heart against a junior. He did not dare give Yun Qi a single glance, because he was afraid he would lose control of his killing intent in front of all who were present, even though he understood very clearly that Luo Changsheng had originally lost. And losing to a freak who could invoke a 9-stage lightning tribulation was clearly no shame. The reason why he had been destroyed was mainly due to his own actions. But as Luo Changsheng's father, as the Holy Eve's realm king, how could he not feel hatred towards Yuan-Chi? As he picked up Luo Changsheng and the unconscious and severely wounded Luo Guxi, a gloomy darkness that had never appeared before floated up in Luo Shangchen's eyes. Furthermore, all of these things were actually caused by a junior born from the lower realms, and whose master was only the ruler of a middle star realm. In his sorrow, he truly recognized one thing. He recognized that perhaps Luo Guxi was right, and he had never truly understood the son that he had been most proud of. The Luo Changsheng he had known and understood was merely the Luo Changsheng that his son had wanted him to see and understand. At this moment, Honorable Kui suddenly turned around, his cold eyes furiously staring at Luo Shangchen. Holy Eve's realm king, as someone who has already reached the pinnacle of the profound realm, Luo Guxi actually dared to attack a junior in front of us all. Not only was her action despicable, it completely shamed the entire profound way while offending my eternal heaven realm and this profound God convention. So how will your Holy Eve's realm account for this matter? Luo Shangchen knew that this would happen the moment Luo Guxi had lost her mind and attacked Yuan-Chi. Luo Guxi had been reclusive since she was young, and she bore a deep hatred towards her biological father. Although she had left the Holy Eve's realm a long time ago, her talent and profound perception were extraordinarily high. She had never relied on the Holy Eve's realm during her passage to become the #1 profound practitioner of the Eastern Divine region. Shockingly, no one knew who her master was to this day, not even Luo Shangchen. Fairy Guxi was famous throughout the Eastern Divine region. Her profound status alone gave her power over all lower, middle, and higher realm kings of Eastern Divine region. Of course, the fact that she had top-tier cultivation meant that her cultivation of the heart was just as great. A strange and reclusive person she might be, but she had never lost control over herself until now. No one could believe that Luo Guxi would do such a thing, but Luo Shangchen knew full well that Luo Changsheng was his sister's darling. She would have been sad for a long time if Changsheng suffered even the tiniest scratch on his skin, much less being trampled on in public like this. Luo Shangchen inhaled deeply before answering in a calm voice. Guxi has always thought it beneath her to admit her roots, but that doesn't change the fact that she's my younger sister and my son's master. Holy Eve's realm is definitely at fault here. Guxi's blunder may be hard to forgive, but fortunately Yuan-Chi is safe and sound, and Guxi herself is seriously wounded. One might say that she has received the punishment she deserves. Therefore, I'd like to request a favor from Eternal Heaven Realm. Please, allow me to take Guxi and Changsheng away for treatment. Once they are both healed, I will personally bring Guxi over to receive her punishment no matter what that may be. Luo Shangchen's reply caught Honorable Kui by surprise. Not only had he phrased his appeal in absolute humility, not trying to fight Eternal Heaven Realm's judgment whatsoever, he could sense a deep sense of disappointment, even despair, behind every word he spoke. My lord, Honorable Kui turned away and looked at the Eternal Heaven God Emperor for guidance. But his emperor's mind was clearly not on this matter, because he raised a hand and said simply, Leave Holy Eve's realm king. You don't need to bring Guxi back for punishment, but tell her that she may not put even half a foot past Holy Eve's realm's borders for the next 1,000 years. It sounded like the God Emperor had given Luo Shangchen permission to take Luo Guxi and Luo Changsheng away for treatment. But in reality, he was exiling her from his realm. Luo Shangchen didn't say anything. Bringing Luo Changsheng and Luo Guxi with him, he floated into the air and flew away soundlessly. Everyone from the Holy Eve's realm followed behind him. They had come to the Eternal Heaven Realm as the strongest star realm of the Eastern Divine region, but they had left like a dog with its tail between its legs. The punishment the Eternal Heaven God Emperor gave wasn't exactly severe, but no one raised any objections regarding the matter. The Holy Eve's realm was still a king realm, and Luo Guxi was still the strongest profound practitioner of the Eastern Divine region. Not even the Eternal Heaven Realm could claim that they were completely immune to the threat presented by such as Luo Guxi and Luo Shangchen themselves, especially Luo Guxi. Also, Luo Guxi was without a doubt the victimizer of this matter, but Yuan-Chi wasn't really the victim. The Holy Eve's realm was. After today, everyone from Luo Chang'an to Luo Changsheng to Luo Guxi had lost practically all of their honor and pride. Since they had already suffered the consequences of their own actions, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor found no need to add salt to injury and earn even more spite than there already was. A loser was ultimately just the loser. The people quickly shifted their attention onto the winner after the moment had passed. The eternal heaven god emperor stood up and declared loudly, "With this term's profound god convention officially draws to a close. The 3 preliminary battles found us 1,000 conferred god candidates, and the conferred god battle was exciting to say the least, and displayed the splendor of Eastern Divine Region's juniors to the utmost. Xianxia and Luo Changsheng's battle for first place especially was astounding even for us, and it deserves to be recorded in our history. Luo Changsheng is the youngest divine king in history, and Xianxia drew 9 stages of tribulation lightning. They are both born in the Eastern Divine Region, so they are undoubtedly a blessing and a gift the heaven itself has granted us. The Eastern Divine Region will undoubtedly shine brighter than ever before. This profound God convention was held because of a coming calamity, and the strength of the conferred God children who participated in this term's conferred God battle far exceeded all other participants in the past. This also added to the impression that they were born to fight the coming calamity. The profound God convention officially drew to an end after the eternal heaven God emperor had given his ending speech. 31 names, the ranking of the conferred God children, quickly appeared on the screen. There were no qualifiers in a God-conferred battle, only elimination rounds. Therefore, the participants' rankings were completely determined by the God Emperors based on their strength and overall performance. First place, Xianxia. Second place, Luo Changsheng. Third place, Xu Yingyu. Fourth place, Jun Zile. The first 4 names on the ranking list represented the new God children of the Eastern Divine Region. Having beaten all 4 former God children, Xianxia proudly sat in first place and became the rightful representative of all of the Eastern Divine Region's young generation. Surprisingly, Shui Meiyin showed up at 5th place on the ranking board. She was by far the youngest cultivator to ever participate in the conferred God battle and the profound God convention. Meanwhile, the denizens of the Snow Song realm were sitting primly in their seats with red faces. Contrary to what others might expect, they hadn't turned red due to excitement. Rather, they were sunk in a deep sense of disbelief. They had just ascended from a middling existence to the center of attention of the whole Eastern Divine Region, and it was an honor they hadn't even dreamed of, much less possessed before. That was why they were bathed in a strong sense of unreality even now. Mu Huanji grabbed his long, white beard and pulled so hard that his face became distorted. Even then, he refused to let go as if it was the only way he could confirm that he wasn't living a dream of the most illusory kind. Mu Bingyun stared at Xianxia with blurry eyes for a very long time. He had finally become champion of the conferred God battle. He actually succeeded in accomplishing his wish. He had created too many miracles to come this far. Behind all those miracles were his obsession, conviction, struggles, blood, and even his own life. This was the outcome he rightfully deserved. Right now, the only thing she wanted was for all his troubles to finally come to an end, now that his wish had finally been fulfilled. But deep worry suddenly entered Mu Bingyun's icy eyes, even though she was still soaked in deep relief. It was because Xianxia's light was too bright right now. He had defeated a divine spirit as a divine tribulation, and he had defeated a divine king as a divine spirit. Besides having 3 types of divine power similar to the 3 elements Luo Changsheng possessed, he also had an incredibly powerful dragon soul. He had drawn a never-seen-before 9-stage lightning tribulation to the God realm. He had commanded the power of the heavens themselves to wound Luo Guxi severely. Any one of these achievements could have astounded the entire profound cultivating world, but when they were all gathered onto just one person, the kind of commotion it would trigger, the kind of consequences and attention it would bring. Mu Bingyun could neither imagine nor predict what was going to happen next because Xianxia's light was so bright that it would dazzle even in a king realm. The 4 conferred God children of this session's profound God convention, Xianxia, Luo Changsheng, Xu Yingyu, and Jun Zile, will be granted a Celestial Time Jade as a reward. Celestial Time Jade. What's that? Huo Poyan asked in a low tone. It's one of the greatest profound jades in the entire God realm, Huo Ruli explained. Its nickname is the Stone of Eternity, and it's even better than the Jade of the 9 Suns. Better than the Jade of the 9 Suns? Huo Poyan was shocked. The Celestial Time Jade only exists in the God realm of absolute beginning, and every single one contains enough energy to rival a small star. That's also how its name came to be. It can be used to forge the absolute best profound artifacts and profound formations, and it can be used as an energy source for profound ships. A single celestial time jade can power even that divine martial heavenly palace you saw at divine martial realm for at least dozens of years. Huo Poyun's mouth was wide open by the time he was done explaining. Xianxia, the eternal heaven god emperor continued. As the champion of the conferred god battle, you'll be granted an unprecedented prize. You may choose to cultivate any one profound art or profound technique from any one of the 4 king realms, namely the Brahma Heaven Monarch realm, Star God realm, Moon God realm, or the Eternal Heaven God realm. As long as it doesn't touch the taboo, we will teach you everything there is behind your choice. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor smiled. If you have a choice in your mind already, you may voice it right now. If not, you may consider this for several days. But before Xianxia could answer, the Brahma Heaven God Emperor suddenly spoke up. Wait, there's something I'd like to say first. Oh, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor looked sideways. A smile spread across the Brahma Heaven God Emperor's face, but his eyes were staring straight at Xianxia. Xianxia, there is something that confounds me quite deeply. Of course, no one denies that you're an extraordinarily talented, profound practitioner. Considering that you've attracted a 9-stage lightning tribulation that would have been rare during the dawn of time, much less now. Even I am incredibly impressed by your feat. But here's my question. The power of that 9-stage lightning tribulation is terrifying even to me, because I would have crumbled into dust already had I been in your place. Yet you are clearly unharmed. Can you tell us why? Xianxia. Every eye was set on Xianxia, hoping to catch the slightest change in expression or gaze. What the Brahma Heaven God Emperor asked was the elephant in the room everyone wanted to know. That is a great question, God Emperor Shishin said smilingly. Tusk, to think that the Brahma Heaven God Emperor himself would lose his cool before me. Well, I can't blame you for that. It isn't every day you find something that confounds even the great Brahma Heaven God Emperor himself. Not at all. He then shifted his gaze to the Dragon Monarch and asked, Xianxia is a human of the Eastern Divine Region, but he also a high-level dragon soul, one that may very well be the soul of a master dragon. I'm sure you want to know why a being of the highest level in this plane would willingly grant its soul to a young human, don't you, Lord Dragon Monarch? But the Dragon Monarch didn't change his expression in the slightest. He answered indifferently, Xianxia's dragon soul is a master dragon soul. The Dragon Monarch's answer caused a commotion among the crowd. A master dragon was a title that was granted only to dragons who had reached divine master realm. A dragon was the pinnacle of all living beings, and a divine master dragon was the strongest existence there was in the entire god realm. All living beings must bow before a master dragon. Xianxia, but, Dragon Monarch continued, a dragon's soul can only be gifted willingly, not robbed. Since the master dragon was willing to grant part of their dragon soul to Xianxia, it may be that Xianxia has done them a great favor, or that Xianxia possesses extraordinary talent. Whatever their reason may be, it is a fact that they have willingly granted Xianxia their soul. In that case, it doesn't matter how Xianxia came by his dragon soul, or who gave it to him in the first place, does it? Shishin God Emperor was immediately stumped for words. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor's eyebrows moved a bit as well. The Dragon Monarch was also clearly implying, how Xianxia survived his 9-stage lightning tribulation has nothing to do with any of you. Yinger very much agrees with you, Senior Dragon Monarch. A female voice suddenly brushed past everyone's hearts like a celestial cord. It caused their souls to tremble a little. It was Xianxia Yinger. Xianxia Yinger had attended the grand final out of nowhere, but she had also remained perfectly silent throughout the fight, making next to no remarks at all. That was why she had instantly attracted everyone's attention and gazes the moment she spoke up. Even the Brahma Heaven God Emperor himself had frowned a little in doubt. He knew full well that his daughter was no kind and understanding person. Unless, if you don't want to explain you survived a 9-stage lightning tribulation safely, you can keep silent, Xianxia. No one has the right to force an answer out of you, Xianxia Yinger said slowly. A secret is a secret only if it isn't known after all. She was surrounded by a group of god emperors, but she spoke as if she was declaring a heavenly decree, as if she was above all of them. The god emperors frowned at her declaration. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor looked puzzled, but didn't attempt to pursue the matter further or refute Xianxia Yinger's words. But Xianxia's heart abruptly jolted in fear. Xianxia Yinger was clearly helping him out of an awkward situation, but for some reason her words only made him felt chilled from head to toe. Her mysterious golden mask covered half her face and her eyes, so he couldn't truly meet her gaze. But Xianxia had the distinct feeling that she had seen through him all the way down to his soul. He had always had this feeling when he met experts far stronger than he was, but it had never been as profound as today. Brahma monarch goddess, Xianxia Yinger. He carved her name deeply into his heart. She might have made herself known for only a few seconds, but he still labeled her as the most dangerous person he had ever met in his life, bar none. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Xianxia neither looked anxious nor afraid, despite facing the Brahma heaven god emperor's question and everyone's gazes. Puzzled, he frowned a little before asking, "Your Highness, that lightning tribulation, it's not a secret really. To tell the truth, I have no idea what is going on here." "Oh, you don't know?" The Brahma heaven god emperor narrowed his eyes slightly. Xianxia nodded. "When I was fighting against Luo Changsheng just now, I was grievously injured and barely conscious. I have no idea why I would suddenly achieve a breakthrough and trigger a lightning tribulation. To tell you the truth, my consciousness was already blurry by the time the lightning tribulation descended on me, and I have no idea what was going on at the time. When I finally awoke, I discovered that my wounds were healed. My profound energy and mental strength had been restored, and my cultivation level had ascended all the way to the middle stage of the divine spirit realm. After that, the lightning tribulation went away completely. Even now, I have no idea what happened after I passed out. I was just about to check with all of you too." Xianxia asked in a surprised tone while frowning deeply. "I've never undergone a lightning tribulation before. I've only heard a little about it while I was under my master's tutelage. But that lightning tribulation just now was largely different from what has been described to me by my master. I am young and inexperienced, so I'm not surprised by my lack of understanding of the matter. But one of you has to know what's going on, right? My seniors." Xianxia casually threw the question right back into the god emperor's laps. Everything he said just now could be summed up in one line. If even you god emperors have no idea what's going on here, then how would a junior like me know anything about it? Xianxia's words made the experts of the Eastern Divine region frown. Some of them looked doubtful, but the majority wore thoughtful looks on their faces. Xianxia wasn't even 30 years old yet, so he definitely was as inexperienced as he claimed to be. Moreover, everyone here had borne witness to how he was crushed and driven to the brink of death by Luo Changsheng just now. If he really was hiding a great secret that could resist even the likes of heavenly tribulation lightning, then why had he failed to protect himself against Luo Changsheng's divine king powers? This was the first 9-stage lightning tribulation to ever happen in the history of the god realm, so of course Xianxia couldn't have experienced this before. Therefore, Xianxia's insistence that he knew nothing was perfectly reasonable, especially now that they had time to think things through. Forget Xianxia. Not even the god emperors could figure out how he stayed unharmed under the 9-stage lightning tribulation, got healed to peak health, and even ascended all the way to the middle stage of the divine spirit realm. Do you really have no idea at all? The Brahma heaven god emperor stared straight into Xianxia's eyes while asking in a calm tone. The ghost of a smile flitted across his face. A god emperor's stare was something a realm king would have found difficult to endure, much less a profound practitioner as young as Xianxia was. It was obvious that Xianxia was feeling the pressure judging from the fearful expression on his face, but he didn't hesitate in the slightest when he said, "Yes, senior. I am young and foolish. I have no idea what happened even now. It'd be great if any of you can enlighten me." Muke Shunian once warned him strictly not to ascend to the divine spirit realm by himself. It was because she was certain that the lightning tribulation he attracted would be an extraordinary one. He had never imagined that he would achieve a breakthrough all of a sudden while he was fighting against Luo Changsheng. He definitely hadn't thought that he would attract an unprecedented 9-stage lightning tribulation during his ascension. Back at the Golden Crow Lightning Flame Valley, when the Golden Crow's soul had gifted him the evil god's lightning seed, it had told him that not even a heavenly tribulation lightning could harm his body. It was a fact. Not only did the 9-stage lightning tribulation fail to do him harm, it even elevated both his cultivation and his great way of the Buddha. Unfortunately, this outcome also came with a huge side effect, and that was a level of shock that no one was immune to. So after he mulled over his options again and again while he was struck by lightning, he decided that his best way out was to insist that he had absolutely no idea what was going on here. Xianxia Yinger's lips curled slightly as she let out a soft HMPH, but she chose not to say anything. Suddenly, an old, excited voice rang. "Why Yunqi is unhurt despite being struck by tribulation lightning? I believe I may know the reason." The old voice instantly attracted everyone's attention. It was none other than the head of the Heavenly Mystery Three Elders himself, Moyu. The Heavenly Mystery Three Elders rarely said anything because they spoke in the language of the heavens. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that their words carried weight beyond imagination. If the same line had come out of another person's mouth, the God Emperors might have chosen to ignore it completely. But since it was the word of Moyu, no one dared to underestimate or treat it carelessly. "Are you sure?" the Eternal Heaven God Emperor exclaimed. Yunqi frowned slightly as his heart skipped a beat. The Heavenly Mystery Realm was just an upper star realm, but its status was equal to that of a king realm. This showed just how important it was in the Eastern Divine region. Yunqi had heard some stories about the Heavenly Mystery Realm, and they almost sounded like myths to him. It couldn't be. Did they really know something? Moyu slowly nodded in response. The excitement on his face was so intense that it shocked even the God Emperors themselves. In fact, Moyu wasn't the only one who was looking excited. Maja and Moen had the same expression as well. The Heavenly Mystery Three Elders had spied on heavenly mysteries for their whole lives, and it was to the point where life and death didn't weigh heavily on them. As a result, the secular world normally wouldn't stir even a ripple in their hearts. Right now, though, they looked so excited that it was almost as if they had witnessed a true god. The Heavenly Mystery Three Elders stared at Yunqi with shaky eyes. Slowly, Moyu began. "This boy may very well be a child of the heavens." Yunqi, "What?" The Eternal Heaven God Emperor's face turned stiff. Child of the heavens. They were such shocking words that left every profound practitioner flabbergasted. It makes sense, doesn't it? Why would a child of the heavens be hurt by heavenly powers? Moyu continued. The dark clouds that covered the world, the 9-stage lightning tribulation, it was nothing like we have ever seen before. It was the heaven itself declaring the birth of a child of the heavens. Everything he said sounded absolutely ridiculous, but since he was one of the Heavenly Mystery Three Elders, it gave his words a completely different meaning. Ha 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 ha. Kang Shishin looked up and laughed loudly. "What utter nonsense. I've lived for tens of thousands of years, and I've never heard of a so-called child of the heavens. I can't believe that someone like you would spout such hilarious nonsense. The Eastern Divine region might respect the Heavenly Mystery Realm deeply, but that didn't mean the Southern Divine region was the same." "I've never heard of this child of the heavens either," Dragon Monarch said indifferently. "However, I'm also aware that the Heavenly Mystery Realm has never told lies. If you are willing, can you tell us what a child of the heavens is? And why are you so sure that Yunqi is a child of the heavens?" But Moyu shook his head. "We don't know what a child of the heavens truly is." "Heh." Kang Shishin curled his lips disdainfully. "Don't tell me you're making a fool out of us then." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor raised his hand to stop him before speaking seriously. "Please continue, Master Moyu." Moyu closed his eyes for a short while before exhaling deeply. Then he began. "The words child of the heavens has been a prophecy from our ancestor dating many years ago. It is also the last heaven mystery my great ancestor, Hayashin, deciphered before his passing." "What? Great ancestor Hayashin?" The Eternal Heaven God Emperor clearly trembled when he heard this. The other God Emperors looked moved as well. "Great ancestor Hayashin? Who's that?" Huo Poyun asked in a quiet voice. "He is the great ancestor who founded the Heavenly Mystery Sect, and the first extraordinary talent who had the ability to decipher heavenly mysteries in the God realm." Huo Ruli explained in a low tone. "Many years ago, he was great friends with the Eternal Heaven's great ancestor. The very first prediction he made was that Eternal Heaven would become a king realm one day." "Ah!" Huo Poyun exclaimed softly. A look of great respect appeared on the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's face when great ancestor Hayashin was mentioned. Even his voice had grown a little gentler. "What is the meaning of the child of the heavens mentioned by great ancestor Hayashin in his final prophecy? Why are you all so certain that this child of the heavens is none other than Yunqi?" The great ancestor prophesied that a child of the heavens would be born in the Eastern Divine region one day. He said that the child of the heavens would be reborn from a 9-stage lightning tribulation, and that he would ultimately become. Moyu's chest heaved up and down as he spoke his last few words in absolute reverence. "A true God, Eternal Heaven God Emperor, Kaianai Yinger, Yunqi." The words true God resounded in everyone's ears like a thunderbolt that shook the very world. The world turned dead silent in an instant. Everyone's faces had changed in this moment. It was as if they had been pushed into a fog of illusions. No one was more shocked than the God Emperors, however. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor, Eternal Heaven God Emperor, Star God Emperor, and Moon God Emperor were frozen as if they had been struck by heavenly lightning. Their bodies, their features, their eyes. Everything had become frozen at once. Even the Dragon Monarch had turned around suddenly, and God Emperor Shishan had jumped to his feet with wide eyes, his sleepy, sloppy posture completely gone in an instant. There was nothing more impactful than the words, "True God," to a profound practitioner, especially for a profound practitioner who had already reached the pinnacle of man. The realms between the elementary profound realm and the sovereign profound realm were known as the 9 realms of the mortal way. It was the profound way cultivated by all mortals. The realms between the divine origin realm and the divine master realm were known as the 7 realms of the divine way. It was the profound way of humans who had broken through their limits and ascended into godhood. But truthfully, it was ultimately just the divine way of mortals. Although it was a way beyond mortal limitations, and a way that tried its very best to get as close to godhood as possible, it ultimately failed to extend into the realm of the gods. True gods were beings that had completely escaped the confines of mortality. They were a dead race and a power who once possessed infinite power during the ancient times. The age of true gods had ended a long time ago. It was common knowledge, or even the complete truth to humans, beasts, demons, and spirits. All of the races in which it was no longer possible to become true gods because the aura of primal chaos was growing murkier and murkier. These days, the words true God were just a distant myth. However, the profound practitioners who stood at the top of the profound way couldn't help but dream about that transient way of the true gods, even though they believed that a true God would never appear among them. To that end, they were willing to sacrifice everything. After all, if the myth was actually realized once more, they would live as long as the heavens and control the very world itself. They would have power beyond all others. Unfortunately, the myth was just a myth. Every king realm had been searching for a way, but no one had been able to truly realize it. To think that they would hear these words again from the heavenly mystery 3 elders, from the great ancestor himself. To think that it was about becoming a true god. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor took a few steps forward before he finally spoke. Is this, truly, the prophecy of great ancestor Heaoshan? The only ones in the world who had the right to pursue that transient way were those from king realms. Normally, they would have ridiculed anyone who spoke of becoming true gods if they didn't hail from a king realm. But the heavenly mystery realm was different from others. The heavenly mystery 3 elders had never spouted a single lie or nonsense. Not to mention that this was a prophecy from great ancestor Heaoshan, founder of the heavenly mystery sect himself. HMPH, what a joke. Kang Shishan looked disdainful. Just now it was child of the heavens, and now it's true gods. Is this really the heavenly mysteries the Eastern divine region regards so highly? The era of gods has long since perished, and it is neither possible for a mortal to become a god, nor is it possible for a true god to be born into this world. This is something even a 3-year-old knows. I have once sought for the divine way myself, but I have failed to find anything despite countless centuries of searching. How dare you mere divine kings make such a bold claim? How dare you speak of becoming true gods? I've never heard such a ridiculous joke in my life. Ha 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 ha. Kang Shishan might be laughing loudly with scorn, but there was clear passion dancing behind his pupils. He might not believe that it was real. In fact, no one present truly believed that it was real. But if there was even a sliver of possibility, it was more than enough to drive them mad. Moyu inhaled deeply before continuing. It is true that I have no right to speak of the way of the true gods at all. The child of the heavens, the 9-stage lightning tribulation, the birth of a true god, I dare not forget or doubt the great ancestor's prophecy, but I must admit that I've never believed that it'd really happen. After all, if a 6-stage lightning tribulation is a dead myth already, then how can there be a 9-stage lightning tribulation? But the impossible has just happened before our eyes. The great ancestor's prophecy has come true right in front of us. If you still don't believe our words, Moyu suddenly furrowed his eyebrows seriously before extending both arms. There was a flash of profound light, and a giant white cannon suddenly winked into view. The cannon was several meters long, and it was encased inside a gentle, profound light. Although it was just a cannon, an air of history and holiness surrounded it. The heavenly mystery god cannon? The eternal heaven god emperor exclaimed softly. Moyu said slowly, "This is the heavenly mystery god canon, and it is the supreme holy object of our realm. It records all of the heavenly mysteries our ancestors have deciphered, and the prophecies they left behind throughout history. You've all read this heavenly mystery god canon before, your highnesses. You've all asked the same question as well. Why is the first page of the heavenly mystery god canon blank? The dragon monarch, god emperor Shishan, eternal heaven god emperor, Brahma heaven god emperor, star god emperor, and moon god emperor all concentrated their gazes on the canon in an instant. Their heartstrings were wound up like a clock. The prophecy has manifested itself. It is time I unveil the answer to your question." Moyu waved his hand, and the first page of the heavenly mystery god canon flipped open before everyone's eyes. As mentioned earlier, it was completely blank. Not a single pattern or mark could be seen on its surface. The heavenly mystery three elders met each other's eyes and nodded in unison. They stretched out their right arms, concentrated, and summoned a profound light unique only to the heavenly mystery realm around their palms. 2 lines of golden inscription appeared clearly under the profound light. When the 9-stage heavenly tribulation appears, the true God will return. 1. The golden words with the mysterious and distant power of heavenly mysteries slipped into the eyes and souls of everyone present. Wah! The silence held for a moment before a storm of human noises suddenly tore it apart. Even if the heavenly mystery god canon hadn't made an appearance, the fact that the heavenly mystery 3 elders had spoken up was shocking enough, much less being shown the ancient prophecy that was etched on the first page of the heavenly mystery god canon. No one present could fail to recognize that the golden words in the canon were ancient and distant. It had to have been engraved at least a couple 100,000 years ago. It also meant that the heavenly mystery 3 elders weren't lying at all. The heavenly mystery realm was weak in terms of strength, but their ability to decipher heavenly mysteries had won them considerable status in the Eastern Divine region. On this conferred God stage, it was also the only star realm that had the right to call themselves the equal of a king realm. It showed just how powerful heavenly mysteries were. The heavenly mystery realm spoke only the truth, and their ability to decipher heavenly mysteries and make accurate prophecies was next to fantastical. This was something everyone in the Eastern Divine region knew, or they would never be as respected as they were by the 4 king realms. It was also a fact that plenty of experts from the Western Divine region, or Southern Divine region, often crossed the boundaries between star realms just to visit the heavenly mystery realm. Some of the heavenly mystery realm's most important prophecies were made just before their master's passing. It was said that one could peek behind the veil like never before when their soul finally departed their bodies. This prophecy was also a prophecy made during one's passing. It was made right before great ancestor Hayashin had passed away. It was only natural that everyone was shocked. The prophecy of heavenly mystery realm's great ancestor, Xianxia may become a true god in the future, a true god. That's impossible, isn't it? A true god is a thing from ancient times, but there's no way a true god can appear in our world right now. It's just common sense. Really? Did your common sense also tell you that a 9-stage lightning tribulation existed in this world? To think that the heavenly mystery great ancestor would predict the coming of a 9-stage lightning tribulation so many years ago, does that mean that the coming of a true God is real as well? If a true God really does appear in this world, then, does that mean they'll rule over the world and stand even above the king realms? That's not all. In ancient times, it is said that true gods were powerful enough to move celestial bodies and create life with a single thought. I doubt that a true god would be threatened even if all of the king realms and the god realm were to work together. SSS, is this real? Will anyone truly believe a prophecy like this? You know you're talking about the heavenly mystery realm, right? Sure, none of us have known the heavenly mystery great ancestor personally, but just look at the god emperor's expressions. The commotion on the conferred god stage didn't look like it would end anytime soon, but the god emperor's attention was completely fixed on the heavenly mystery god canon. No matter how noisy their surroundings were, they never looked away for even an instant. It was almost as if they could see through the golden prophecy and figure out some deeper meaning if they tried hard enough. Godhood. It was something they had pursued for their entire lives. It was something that shook their souls like never before. Even God Emperor Shishan, for all his contempt, was staring at the canon with bulging eyes and was frozen like someone had cast a spell on him. Meanwhile, Xianxia's lips curled after the initial shock had passed. This heavenly mystery realm is utter bullshit. The reason I'm not afraid of any lightning tribulation, or any form of lightning at all, is because I have the evil god's profound veins. Like hell, I'm a child of the heavens. Also, that 9-stage lightning tribulation earlier was filled with extreme violence, anger, and hate. It's clear that all it wanted to do is to annihilate me utterly, so how could it possibly be declaring to the world the birth of the child of the heavens? That being said, what a wonderful tale that was. I had to feign ignorance because I had no idea how to explain myself. But I never thought that 3 old men would cover for me. Even better, it seems that everyone, including the god emperors, is falling for it. The heavenly mystery great ancestor, huh? The first page of the heavenly mystery god canon, huh? The perfect prediction of the 9-stage heavenly tribulation, huh? I would have believed it myself if I didn't know the truth. Meanwhile, the Snow Song realm was busy fighting their own demons. The fact that Xianxia had attracted a 9-stage lightning tribulation and became champion was dreamy enough. But this prophecy from the heavenly mystery great ancestor himself had kicked them all the way to La La Land. Bing Yun, Mu Huanji barely squeezed the words out of his lips. Are you sure this is the same person you brought back from the lower realms? Mu Bingyun couldn't say anything. He was right. This young man had shocked the entire Eastern Divine Region, God Realm, and even the God Emperors themselves. Is he really the same person as the one she had brought to the Snow Song Realm in passing as repayment for saving her life? And that was just 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Xianxia hadn't even entered the Divine Way yet. She had to protect him from the dark again and again. But today, he had reached the highest peak that could possibly be attained by the juniors of the Eastern Divine Region and stood on a level that no one in the history of the Snow Song Realm had ever reached. He had attracted an impossible, legendary 9-stage lightning tribulation. He even corresponded to a prophecy of true gods that was destined to turn the entire God realm upside down. To think that he would be someone she brought back from the lower realms. Huo Ruli and Yan Juhai exchanged glances with each other, but they were both stumped for words. A 9-stage heavenly tribulation, a true god prophecy. Shui Yingyu whispered. Father, you once said that heavenly mystery realm's main function is to spy on the heavens, not predict the future, right? But every prophecy that entered the heavenly mystery god canon always comes true without exception. Is this prophecy going to come true as well? Shui Qianheng didn't answer her, however. He was completely unresponsive, and his eyes were completely blank. Anyone who paid close attention to him would realize that his lips were trembling non-stop. The higher one's status was, the stronger their profound cultivation, the better they understood what a prophecy from the heavenly mystery realm and godhood truly meant. The great ancestor was the one who created the heavenly mystery god canon, and he was also the one who personally wrote these 12 words onto the first page of the canon. Moyu exclaimed somewhat emotionally. The great ancestor made a total of 7 prophecies in his life, and 6 of them have come true already. Today, his final prophecy regarding an absolutely ludicrous 9-stage heavenly tribulation has come true as well. I understand that the part regarding the return of the true God is still too unbelievable for most people, but at least the 3 of us are absolutely unwavering in our belief. Moyu looked at Xianxia before raising his voice suddenly. As I mentioned earlier, the 9-stage lightning tribulation is something that not even you can defend against, my god emperors. But not only did it fail to hurt Xianxia in the slightest, it even gave him new life and the ability to command the heavenly lightning. Everything matches up to the great ancestor's prophecy regarding the child of the heavens. Since he's a child of the heavens, he's naturally blessed by the heavens themselves. If he really does become a true god in the future, then it will be as the heavens will. For no one can rebel against the heavens. Moyu's words resounded beside everyone's ears like thunder once more. When he was finally done, Moyu waved his hands and summoned the heavenly mystery god canon before him and the rest of the elders. Then, he slowly closed it once more. The 10 golden words vanished before everyone's eyes, and all kinds of expressions flitted across the god emperor's faces. But the one similarity they shared was that they were all focused on Xianxia. Moyu was just about to withdraw the heavenly mystery god canon and put it away when 2 new golden lines suddenly appeared beneath the original prophecy. Virtue will lead to eternal peace. Evil will bring the carnage of a devil god. The heavenly mystery god canon vanished, but the heavenly mystery 3 elders all lost their cool in an instant. Although the words had only appeared for a brief instant, They slipped into their hearts and souls like they had a mind of their own. But Moyu raised his hands and shook his head slowly. If the great ancestor doesn't wish to make it known, then we mustn't say it. These 15 words shall be known to no other but ourselves. Plus, Xianxia has clear eyes despite his fierce temperament, and there are no signs of negativity on him whatsoever. There's no way he'll become a devil god. Moen and Magi also nodded slightly. They were the heavenly mystery 3 elders, so their eye for people was extremely good. Although they had no idea what the latter half of great ancestor Hayashin's prophecy really meant, they were at least certain that Xianxia was a resolute, upright man who had nothing to do with the carnage of a devil god at all. Plus, he was the child of the heavens. He would be the last person to go against the heavens. The eternal heaven god emperor stood up and sighed quietly. To think that great ancestor Hayashin would leave behind such a shocking prophecy before his passing. What a shame, what a shame. You can't seriously believe this so-called prophecy, eternal heaven god emperor. God Emperor Shishin grinned a little. I will admit that even I've heard of the heavenly mystery realm despite living in the southern divine region, and I may have chosen to believe some of their prophecies, for fun, if it was about anything else. But this, true God, Tusk, you sure you mortals are worthy to predict the likes of true gods? The heavenly mystery 3 elders were completely unmoved despite being ridiculed by God Emperor Shishin. The eternal heaven God Emperor said, "It is unwise to trust a heavenly mystery in full, but it is also unwise to distrust a heavenly mystery. I admit that the part of the prophecy proclaiming the return of true gods is pretty hard to believe, but the 9-stage heavenly tribulation is real, isn't it? It is also a fact that Xianxia has beaten a divine spirit as a divine tribulation, and later a divine king as a divine spirit." Your point? God Emperor Shishin narrowed his eyes, but the eternal heaven God Emperor chose to ignore him before staring at Xianxia seriously. Xianxia, a heavenly mystery cannot be trusted fully, but your talent and aptitude are definitely one of a kind. It'd be a huge loss to the Eastern Divine Region if they are wasted even a little. To avoid that, I'd like to accept you into the Eternal Heaven Realm. What do you think? A commotion rose once more the second he said this. A king realm was the highest existence in the God realm. Power, cultivation, fame, they stood at the top of the primal chaos. Even the lowliest guard or servant of a king realm had the right to overlook the world as a god would towards its creation. Entering a king realm was the biggest dream any profound practitioner from any divine region and star realm could hope for. However, it was also the most luxurious and impossible. But right now, the Eternal Heaven Realm had openly invited Xianxia to join them. And the invitation had been handed out by none other than the Eternal Heaven God Emperor himself. Had Xianxia been anyone else, the entire world would have been flabbergasted. But after the initial shock had passed, the God Emperor's choice suddenly felt quite natural. He was the champion of the conferred God battle, a warrior who could beat a divine king at the divine spirit realm, a talent who possessed 3 divine powers and 3 elements, and a destined one who attracted a 9-stage lightning tribulation and corresponded to a true God prophecy. Any one of these achievements was enough to astound the entire world, much less win the favor the Eternal Heaven Realm. At first, the members of the Snow Song Realm were astonished by this. Then, ecstasy came over them. Xianxia was the direct disciple of the Snow Song Realm's Realm King, and he had just won them unparalleled glory. If Xianxia had gone to any other star realm, it would definitely be a black stain in their history. But the Eternal Heaven Realm, that was a different story altogether. Xianxia, accept it quickly, Mu Huanji said. The rest of the elders and palace masters looked just as happy, so much so that they thought that Mu Huanji's urge was completely pointless. This was the Eternal Heaven Realm, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor himself offering Xianxia an olive branch. So why on earth would he turn down such an offer? Literally no one would. The leap from a middle star realm to a king realm would be the most shocking leap in the entire history of the God realm, but Xianxia undoubtedly deserved it considering his talent and performance. Mu Bingyun, the Snow Song realm no longer deserves Xianxia. Yan Juhai sighed quietly. 9-stage lightning tribulation, true God prophecy. Huo Ruli let out a long sigh. He just couldn't calm down no matter how he tried. Xianxia raised his eyebrows, but before he could reply to the Brahma Heaven God Emperor suddenly stood up with a smile. I strongly agree with your assessment, Eternal Heaven God Emperor. Xianxia is a cultivator who has drawn a 9-stage lightning tribulation, and his talents cannot be allowed to go to waste one bit. However, and I apologize if I'm being too direct, no one is better than my Brahma monarch realm when it comes to the profound way, not even your eternal heaven realm. Therefore, he should come with me instead if we truly don't want him to waste his talent. Everyone held their breaths when they heard this. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor was clearly fighting the eternal Heaven God Emperor over Xianxia. God Emperor laughed. This king cannot disagree with the Brahma Heaven God Emperor, but the Brahma Heaven God Emperor has not completely understood what I am saying. He looked at Xianxia and smiled, his gaze warm. This king doesn't only want Xianxia to join my eternal heaven realm. In fact, I want to take him as my personal disciple. When the eternal heaven God Emperor said that, it sounded as if a thunderclap was set off right next to everyone's ears. Even the many guardians at the scene at Honorable Quihui's level had faces full of shock. To become a denizen of the eternal heaven God realm versus becoming a personal disciple of the eternal heaven realm king were two completely different matters. It was the difference of heaven and earth. The latter meant being direct successor of a God Emperor. With his current profound cultivation level, if Xianxia entered the eternal heaven God realm, he would be considered a lower-class denizen, but the position of a God Emperor's direct successor. His position would not be inferior to that of the Guardians. Basically speaking, protectors were second only in status to the God Emperor. All the disciples of the Snow Song realm, including the palace masters, stammered in shock, unable to recover their composure for a long time. Personal disciple? In his surprise, Mu Huanja's right hand tugged vigorously at his beard. Despite the pain which made his face wince, he still couldn't believe what he had heard. Becoming part of a king realm was something that all profound practitioners pursued. As for becoming a personal disciple of a God Emperor, this was something that they dared not even dream or fantasize about. Oh, my lord! Hugh Ruli's eyes were wide open. The personal disciple of the eternal heaven God Emperor. His status would not be inferior to any realm king. In fact, he could even look down on realm kings if he wanted to. Ha. The entire audience was shocked, but the Brahma Heaven God Emperor stayed calm and let out a burst of laughter. Such a coincidence, this king is also lacking a personal disciple. As the Brahma Heaven God Emperor spoke these words, all the jaws that hadn't yet dropped had now plummeted to the ground. Xianxia, the eternal heaven God Emperor, looked in his direction and gave a plain laugh in reply. When it comes to the profound way, this king is definitely still a bit lacking when compared to you. But from time immemorial until now, you have always been a fanatic in pursuit of the pinnacle of the profound way. You've never had anything besides that to occupy your heart, and you've never even spent the slightest bit of effort on your descendants. If this king doesn't remember wrongly, you've still yet to accept a personal disciple. So in that aspect, I'm afraid that you are not a match for this king when it comes to teaching a disciple. Ha. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor laughed out loud. Eternal Heaven God Emperor, you couldn't be further from the truth. The reason why this king has never accepted a personal disciple is out of personal choice. That was because there was no one worthy. However, Xianxia has displayed the apex of talent and shown himself to be the pinnacle amongst men. This king cannot but help but want to personally receive him and will spare no effort in raising him up. And besides, although this king has never had a personal disciple, your words shouldn't mislead others. With a look of pride on his face, he looked in the direction of Xianxia Yinger. Yinger back then was personally taught by this king. I must say that her achievements so far are slightly better than that of your sons and descendants. Xianxia Yinger. The entire conferred God stage area was completely silent save for the two God Emperors arguing back and forth. The eternal Heaven God Emperor stopped briefly. He was definitely clear on the matter. Xianxia Yinger's profound cultivation was not just merely, slightly, better than his descendants. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor stepped forward and continued speaking. It is precisely because this king is such a fanatic about the profound way that I am definitely superior to anyone in the Eastern Divine region in my understanding of the profound way. My Brahma Monarch God realm is the #1 king realm of the Eastern Divine region. When it comes to history, foundation, and resources, we are definitely slightly better than your Eternal Heaven God realm. Even when it comes to treasured pellets or divine jades, no one is comparable to us. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor gave an indifferent chuckle. Personally, I won't say it'll be a case of crossing the heavens in one step, but this king is definitely be sure about one thing. If Xianxia becomes this king's disciple, he'll become a divine Sovereign in less than 100 years, reaching divine sovereign in less than 100 years. These words came from the very mouth of the Brahma heaven god emperor, sending quakes and tremors through the souls of all the profound experts present. He, 100 years, the eternal heaven god emperor chuckled. Brahma heaven god emperor, that 100 years you speak of would be equivalent to how many years in my eternal heaven realm? He stretched out his hand and raised his index finger. Just about a month. The eternal heaven pearl is the heaven-bestowed treasure of the eternal heaven realm, and it is able to allow one to grow to their greatest heights in the shortest time possible. Xianxia is now considered one of the heaven-chosen children and has the qualifications to enter the eternal heaven pearl. The Brahma heaven god emperor refused to budge. Once 3,000 years pass within the eternal heaven pearl, I'm afraid that its power will already be drained dry. Are you telling me that the eternal heaven pearl still has the power to allow Xianxia to enter a second time? No. The eternal heaven god emperor shook his head. The Brahma heaven god emperor has forgotten that Wei Hen of the devil race infiltrated the 1,000 heaven-chosen children, lower the count to 998. Although Li Jianming has unfortunately lost his life, he still retains the quota and place of a chosen. Wei Hen, however, has left an empty spot, and as for this empty spot, the eternal heaven god emperor continued to laugh. If Xianxia becomes this king's personal disciple, this king will also enter the eternal heaven pearl at the same time to personally teach and instruct Xianxia within the eternal heaven divine realm, whereas you, Brahma heaven god emperor, I'm afraid you're unable to do this. The Brahma heaven god emperor frowned. Atop the conferred god stage, several mouths were wide open as they stared agape at the two god emperors fighting over Xianxia. The Brahma heaven god emperor and the eternal heaven god emperor were the most powerful existences in the entire eastern divine region, who had everything at their disposal, whether it be profound cultivation, power, authority, and reputation. At this moment, these two were squabbling over taking in a personal disciple without a care to their image, boasting about the various benefits they could offer and the depths of their strength. The stately eternal heaven god emperor had now even dragged the eternal heaven pearl into the tug-of-war and brought it to the table as a bargaining chip. In all the history of the eastern divine region, there had never been such a ridiculously unimaginable moment such as this, and never before in the history of the eastern divine region had another person appeared that deserved such treatment. The star god emperor and the moon god emperor both sat still in their original seats. Both of them wanted to bring Xianxia over as well, but in all of the eastern divine region, and among the four great king realms, the Brahma monarch god realm was the strongest, while the eternal heaven god realm held the best reputation. The star god realm and the moon god realm were both weaker than them. Now that the Brahma heaven god emperor and the eternal heaven god emperor were shamelessly fighting over the boy, despite wanting him with all their might, it wouldn't be their turn at all. Please calm down, the dragon monarch interjected, his words seemingly carrying a heavy weight. He looked at Xianxia and said, both god emperors are fighting because of a young man, but with regards to the result, Xianxia should make the decision himself. That's a given, the eternal heaven god emperor chuckled. Xianxia, my eternal heaven realm is the most righteous and glorious of all in the eastern divine region. If you become this king's personal disciple, you will definitely have the qualifications to inherit the will of eternal heaven and receive the respect and recognition of every being throughout the eastern divine region. Heh! The Brahma heaven god emperor coldly laughed and stated his offer plain and clear. Xianxia, I don't care about your character nor your ambitions. However, if you wish to pursue the pinnacle of the profound way, then you should come over to my Brahma monarch god realm. That is because this king stands at the peak of the eastern divine region's profound way. Two of the strongest god emperors were fighting, in public, over a young profound practitioner from a middle star realm. Everyone's eyes continued to bulge, and they were unable to close their open mouths. After both god emperors finished speaking, they locked their gazes on Xianxia, as if they were worried that Xianxia wasn't able to see their sincerity and fervor. A god emperor's majesty, a god emperor's aloofness, a god emperor's prestige, all of these right now were but a dog's fart. This scene was also totally unexpected by Xianxia. If it were anyone else, they would have long been overwhelmed with shock and a mad elation that was difficult to curb. Despite that, the audience only saw a picture of perfect calm on Xianxia's face during this entire period, which should have been impossible. Xianxia cupped both hands in a show of honor and respectfully replied, "The kindness that both god emperors have shown is perhaps eons beyond what this junior deserves." However, this junior already has a sect and master. When I first entered into the God realm, it was my current sect who took me in. I owe a great deal to my master, and my debt to her is greater than the highest mountain, something that I'd never be able to repay in this lifetime. If this junior were to turn my back on my sect and master, it would not only disrespect them, but I believe it would also be an insult, and that everyone under the sun, including both your highnesses, would definitely look down upon. The eternal heaven god emperor slowly laughed. Xianxia, you being able to have such a line of thinking means that you're a rarely seen loyal person. This is very good. However, you need not worry. If you become this king's personal disciple, not only will your sect and master not be ashamed, they will instead have the glory of 1,000,000 years. No one will criticize you, nor will they throw shade on your actions. They would, in fact, respect and envy your decision. What the eternal heaven god emperor said was true. Xianxia had entered into the divine Ice Phoenix sect and had the identity of being the personal disciple of the sect master. Joining another power would normally anger and insult the divine Ice Phoenix sect. But what were the eternal heaven and Brahma monarch realm? A god emperor's personal disciple hailing from the divine Ice Phoenix sect would be the greatest glory that it could achieve. The entire Snow Song realm would also enjoy a greater and more influential position in the eastern divine region. The entire audience of the Snow Song realm was red with excitement, waiting for Xianxia's reply. No, rather, they were waiting for his choice. From everyone's perspective, Xianxia had no logical reason to reject the offers. Instead, Xianxia lowered his head and softly spoke. Junior's origin is from the lower realms and is of lowly birth. Being able to be accepted into the Snow Song realm was the greatest fortune of my entire life. Originally, I wouldn't even have the smallest of qualifications to enter into such a holy land. This junior is deeply indebted and respectful to my teacher and elders of the sect. I have never had thoughts of leaving, so this junior will only be able to decline both your graces. The eternal heaven god emperor and the Brahma heaven god emperor both frowned at the same time, while everyone around the conferred god stage was left speechless. What Xianxia had said earlier sounded like a form of foreshadowing, leading slowly up to accepting either of the emperor's offers. Everything sounded logical, but right now, he had actually rejected the both of them, rejecting the opportunity to enter into a king realm, rejecting the chance of becoming a god emperor's personal disciple. What is he saying? Is he nuts? The personal disciple of the eternal heaven god emperor and the Brahma heaven god emperor. Just based on that identity, he could walk through any and every star realm unhindered, something that nobody could ever dream of in hundreds and thousands of years. He actually turned them down. A king realm and the Snow Song realm, their differences are like mud and the sky. He actually chose to remain in the Snow Song realm. Does his brain have a concussion? Perhaps he might even invite the wrath of both god emperors. What in the world is he thinking? Xianxia, Mu Huanji nearly hopped up in anxiety. What in the world are you saying? If you can become a god emperor's personal disciple, the sect master herself will be happier than anyone else. Why you? If he stayed in the Snow Song realm, even if he had now placed first in the conferred god battle, he would still retain the identity of a disciple from a middle star realm. If he became a personal disciple of a god emperor, his backing would be that of a god emperor's as well as an entire king realm. The difference was worlds apart, whether it be identity, status, or future potential, based on one issue. The issue of the conferred god battle where Xianxia had caused the Holy Eve's realm to form a deep grudge against him. If the Holy Eve's realm were to try and take revenge, the Snow Song realm would not be able to shield him. But if his backing were to be one of the king realms, even if the Holy Eve's realm had 10 times more courage than now, they would definitely not dare touch a hair on Xianxia's head. Isn't this brat always shrewd and intelligent? Why is it that he's suddenly behaving as if someone gave him a kick to the head? Shui Qianheng shook his head. Xianxia had attracted a 9-stage heavenly tribulation and also fit the description of the true God prophecy which sent shockwaves quaking across the entire God realm. Countless eyes were now fixated upon him, which was why he currently needed strong and powerful backing that could provide him with protection. But he actually didn't want one. Furthermore, even if he really wasn't willing, publicly rejecting 2 great god emperors was no longer a matter of losing his marbles. Yet, something even more unexpected occurred. After the eternal heaven god emperor recovered from his shock, he still chuckled genially. Having deep gratitude to your master and sect is actually not a bad thing. This matter concerns the entirety of the rest of your life. You should indeed deeply mull over this, so you need not give an answer today. You can make your decision after you've taken some time to ponder over it. A stately god emperor being turned down by a young, profound practitioner. He was neither vexed nor angry. It didn't even result in a cold demeanor from him, and he actually continued to gently lend his advice. The Brahma heaven god emperor similarly didn't show any anger and just merely laughed. As he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a message in his ear transmitted from his daughter. The color on his face changed, hurriedly turning to look at Xianxia Yinger. Are you serious about this? The edges of Xianxia Yinger's mouth slowly curled upwards. Her lips looked like they were coated with glistening nectar of the heavens. A 9-stage heavenly tribulation, the true God prophecy. Don't tell me he isn't worthy of my interest. The Brahma heaven god emperor turned around and laughed heartily. Xianxia, whether you want to enter my Brahma monarch god realm is a decision that has to be willingly made by you. If you agree, this king will be ecstatic beyond words. If you decline, this king will definitely not force you, however. This king has another matter I'd like to ask you about. Do you have a wife? Xianxia froze. He had an ominous suspicion creeping up his back. He slowly dragged out his answer. Junior, after entering the god realm, my heart has always been set on training in the profound way. So, I've never given a thought about the affairs of the heart, marriage and such. What Xianxia said was kind of apt. After he had entered the god realm, he had always racked his head for ideas on how to find Jasmine. When would he have time to think of affairs of the heart? But before coming to the god realm, Amen. The Brahma heaven god emperor chuckled and continued. That's good to hear. This king has several sons and grandsons, but only one daughter, and she's the apple of my eye, my most treasured child of all. Yinger excels at everything. She's even dubbed the goddess across the god realm. When it comes to profound cultivation, no one of her generation is her match. When it comes to looks, only she and the Dragon Queen are worthy of being mentioned in the same sentence. In terms of her birth, she's this king's daughter. Her status isn't beneath anyone in the god realm. However, thanks to all of this, when it comes to Yinger's marriage matters, this king is severely vexed, because in this king's eyes, throughout the entire eastern divine region, it is impossible to find a man of a caliber worthy to match Yinger. No one so far has attracted the eye of my daughter. When it came to talking about his one and only daughter Xianxia Yinger, the Brahma heaven god emperor changed from one of pride to that of extreme satisfaction, as if telling the entire universe that compared to his status as the #1 of the eastern divine region, Xianxia Yinger was actually his greatest and proudest achievement, especially the few sentences toward the very end. He was basically saying that every so-called elite male in the entire eastern divine region, including the sons and grandsons of other king realms, were wild chickens and loose dogs, totally unfit for his daughter. The entire crowd stayed silent as they heard his passionate speech. What did he mean by saying all that? Unless he wanted. No way. Brahma heaven god emperor. What do you mean by all this? The eternal heaven god emperor eyed the Brahma heaven god emperor and then swiftly turned his gaze on the completely silent Xianxia Yinger, a stern look starting to appear on his face. The Brahma heaven god emperor took one step forward, laughing jovially. Today, a man worthy of this king's daughter has finally appeared. Xianxia, this king would like to betroth my daughter to you. Do you accept? Xianxia. Oh, Xianxia, Japanese letter? Thud. Countless profound experts around the god-conferred stage fell directly, plopping there on their seats. The Brahma heaven god emperor didn't have many followers among his entourage, but among those who came and heard this, they immediately stood up straight, completely shocked. Not only them, the eternal heaven god realm, the star god realm, the moon god realm, virtually everyone else had looks of shock plastered on their faces. Their reactions were no less inferior to the ones exhibited during the 9-stage lightning tribulation. The seats of both the Star God Emperor and Moon God Emperor shattered to bits as the both of them quickly stood up, faces full of shock. On the other hand, both the brows of the Eternal Heaven God Emperor sank, and his eyes also held shock within. What sort of existence was Xianxia Yinger? The daughter of the Brahma Heaven God Emperor, the God Realm's goddess. Be her fame in the God realm or her power within the Brahma monarch God realm, she wasn't beneath the Brahma heaven God emperor at all. In fact, the Brahma heaven God emperor had personally said that eventually the Brahma monarch realm king position would only be inherited by Xianxia Yinger. When it came to status, she was currently the daughter of the Brahma heaven God emperor, and the future Brahma monarch realm king. When it came to looks, she was mentioned in the same breath as the Dragon Queen, both being known as the two greatest beauties of the god realm. It was rumored that just laying eyes on her once would cause everything else to lose color, forever. When it came to profound cultivation, she was definitely invincible among the peers of her generation. Rumor had it that she was actually, already, not far in terms of power from her father. Xianxia Yinger was perfect in all aspects, whether it be position, cultivation, or looks. She was the epitome of perfection, literally the embodiment of a goddess. As for the Dragon Queen, whose name was usually said in conjunction with hers, she was the Dragon Monarch's wife, and the Dragon Monarch was the current #1 expert in the god realm. The current #1 expert was a match for the Dragon Queen. Throughout the years, several profound practitioners were all guessing and fantasizing about who would get the goddess in the end, or rather, was there any man out there in this world that was a match for the goddess? Before Xianxia, Luo Changsheng was the head of the 4 god children of the eastern region, the #1 of his generation, but even then, Luo Changsheng would never ever dare dream of being close to Xianxia Yinger. That was because he didn't even have the most fundamental qualifications to do so. Being able to have the foundations to court Xianxia Yinger, what kind of monster of a man would be able to? Star gods, moon gods, guardians, the sons of god emperors, even the realm kings of the king realms. But no one so far had moved Xianxia Yinger. Yet right now, the Brahma heaven god emperor was voluntarily initiating a betrothal. This was the most absurd occurrence they had ever heard of or experienced in their entire lives. Regardless of the outcome, just based on this offer from the Brahma heaven god emperor, even if Xianxia wasn't crowned the conferred god #1, hadn't undergone a 9-stage heavenly tribulation, and wasn't in a true god prophecy. Even if he were some unknown bumpkin, this offer alone would make his name reverberate all across the god realm and cause uncountable waves of shock, aberration, and even jealousy and hatred. This can't be happening, right? The Brahma heaven god emperor is actually offering the goddess to Xianxia. Pa! A slap rang out. Mu Huanji had given himself a tight slap as he stood frozen to the ground, and after a while murmured to himself, "What about Fakesu? That's the goddess, the daughter of the Brahma heaven god emperor." This piece of news was even more explosive and shocking by 100 times than that of a god emperor offering to take Xianxia as a personal disciple. This clearly showed how important the god emperors viewed Xianxia, which far exceeded the expectations of every other profound practitioner out there. Every Snow Song Realm member was riddled with excitement, yet Mu Bingyun only furrowed her brows. The Dragon Queen is married to the Dragon Monarch, while the goddess is now being betrothed to Big Brother Xianxia. That means to say, my Big Brother Xianxia is on the same level as the Dragon Monarch. Isn't that right? Daddy once mentioned that it was the Dragon Monarch who chased after the Dragon Queen. Because of her, he didn't once touch a single other woman during his lifetime, and it was only after many years that he finally won her heart. Whereas the goddess is taking the initiative to propose a marriage to Big Brother Xianxia. That means to say, my Big Brother Xianxia is even more outstanding than the Dragon Monarch. Daddy, isn't that right? Shui Meiyin was all giggles and smiles. With regards to what was happening, she wasn't an ounce uncomfortable. In fact, she was extremely proud and didn't hesitate to spew line after line of her warped logic. Shui Qianheng, Brahma Heaven God Emperor, you? The Eternal Heaven Emperor's face distorted countless of times throughout. When it came to competing over Xianxia, because of the Eternal Heaven Pearl, he felt that he had a steady advantage, but who would have thought that the Brahma Heaven God Emperor would suddenly put Xianxia Yinger on the table? As one of the 4 God Emperors of the Eastern Divine Region, he had naturally seen Xianxia Yinger's true countenance several times. Based on his vast experiences, he had to admit that there was no man in the world who would be able to reject the goddess. Furthermore, Xianxia was a young man had yet to reach 30 years of age. Tusk. God Emperor Shishin placed both his hands leisurely behind his head and softly commented, Brahma Heaven God Emperor, you're seriously willing, huh? Hey. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor replied with a laugh of his own. It's not a matter of willing, rather. Besides Xianxia, I'm afraid no other man is worthy of Yinger. Does this mean that the Brahma Heaven God Emperor actually believes that true God prophecy? Ha. God Emperor Shishin laughed in ridicule. You said one sentence that this king agrees with. An ordinary man has no qualifications to fulfill the prophecy of becoming a true god. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor chuckled in return. That's why this king does not believe in the true God prophecy, but this king personally witnessed the 9-stage heavenly tribulation. This one fact is more than enough for me. God Emperor Shishin narrowed his eyes and suddenly switched topics. He said with a beaming smile, "You're free to marry your daughter to whomever you want, but keep in mind one fact. This king is reminding you that the South Sea God Emperor has been crazy about the goddess forever. Each and every time he visits the Eastern Divine Region is because of the goddess. If he comes to know of this matter, I'm afraid he'll be furious." The South Sea God Emperor was the head of the Southern Region's 4 God Emperors and also the #1 expert in the Southern Divine Region. The Star God Emperor's face darkened, but he didn't speak a word. The absolute God-slaying poison that Jasmine was afflicted with originated from the South Sea realm. This king has always viewed the South Sea God Emperor as a bosom friend, but for him to be this king's son-in-law, I'm afraid he still doesn't have the qualifications. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor was roaring with gusto and laughter as he spoke passionately. No one else dared to contradict him. He ignored Kang Shishin and turned towards Yunqi, asking, "So how about it? Are you willing to marry this king's daughter?" Gulp. Several present violently swallowed. This was a question that no man throughout the entire God realm could say no to. All he had to do was just nod and he'd gain the most beautiful, the most influential, and the most glorious of all women. He would become the subject of envy of every man throughout the entire God realm. How could anyone say no? What reason could there be to say no? The Eternal Heaven God Emperor's temperament was the most moderate of them all, and even his relationship with the Brahma Heaven God Emperor could be said to be quite cordial, or at least that was what it seemed to be on the surface. But at this moment, what he wanted to do the most was to point at the man and give him a harsh tongue lashing, using his very own daughter as a honey trap. What kind of a skill was that? However, in front of this ultimate trump card, he couldn't find a better one, although he had several unwed daughters, several of them talented and beautiful. But this was the goddess they were talking about. Compared to her, it was better for him not to bring it up. Yunqi silently took in a deep breath, and just as he was about to answer, he heard a harried voice suddenly shout out, "With regards to this matter, this humble one has something to say." Shui Qianheng stood up, giving Shui Yinghan, who was beside him, a big shock. "Oh, glazed Light Realm King?" The Brahma Heaven God Emperor turned his eyes upon him. Shui Qianheng was actually blushing a little, but he soon regained composure and seriously announced, "If the Brahma Heaven God Emperor wants to marry off your daughter, it'd be a grand occasion for the entire Eastern Divine Region." However, with regards to Yunqi, Qianheng has no choice but to make something clear. Actually, about half a month ago, Yunqi and my daughter Meiyin developed feelings for each other after their battle on the conferred God stage. However, my daughter is still young and immature, so Qianheng advised against it. But my daughter had such deep feelings for him, and Yunqi also felt. Cough, cough. As a result, Qianheng couldn't bear to pull these pair of lovebirds apart, so I acquiesced and allowed for it to happen, setting a wedding date for them. The wedding will be held when the two of them leave the Eternal Heaven Divine Realm in 3 years. Whoa! Shui Qianheng's sudden announcement produced innumerable waves of shock. Yunqi was struck dumb. Shui Yinghan's mouth went wide open as he searched through his memories and weakly muttered, "Royal father, you back then, that wasn't what you said." "Shut up!" Shui Qianheng slapped him on the head. During the conferred God battle, Shui Qianheng had indeed admired Yunqi, but admiration was one thing. Marrying his beloved daughter to him was definitely something he wouldn't be able to accept. Regardless of how shocking his talent might be, how powerful and strong he was, his birthplace was still much too low. To the God realm, the lower realms were the lowest planes of existence. How would he be willing to betroth the daughter he treated as the very stars themselves to someone from the lower realms? One's birth wasn't something that could be changed. But it was different now. 9-stage heavenly tribulation, true God prophecy. Under these circumstances, even the Brahma Heaven God Emperor and the Eternal Heaven Emperor were vigorously fighting over Yunqi. Birthplace, that wasn't worth a fart. Right now, it wasn't a matter of Yunqi not being able to measure up to his daughter. It was now a matter of his daughter not being able to measure up to Yunqi. All of a sudden, the one who dropped down to stand in his daughter's way was Qianai Yinger, only the worst possible opponent in the entire God realm that she could face. Shui Meiyin was hailed as the brightest pearl of her generation in the entire Eastern Divine Region. But at present, She wasn't qualified to compare with the goddess. If he didn't thicken his skin and jump out right now, Shui Meiyin probably wouldn't even have the slightest of chance of even being a little wife. Oh, the Brahma heaven god emperor's eyebrows moved slightly. Is that true? This is a major turning point for my daughter and something that will impact her whole life. I wouldn't dare lie about this, Shui Qianheng said shamelessly. The friends from Divine Ice Phoenix sect can verify my claim. They were present when my daughter and Yun Qi became officially engaged to one another. Mu Huanji and the others panicked, unsure how they should respond at all. In fact, they knew better than anyone that Shui Qianheng's so-called wedding engagement was just a delaying tactic Yun Qi used in a moment of desperation to turn down Shui Meiyin's pursuit and quell Shui Qianheng's fury. On the other hand, if they were to say that it wasn't a wedding engagement, they actually couldn't. Technically speaking, everything that happened that day could count as a wedding engagement if they were to ignore the underlying context. Even better, both parties' elders were present that day, so it wasn't a one-sided engagement. It was at this moment Mu Bingyun stood up and said seriously, Mu Bingyun from the Snow Song Realm can prove that Realm King Qianheng's claim is absolutely true. Half a month ago, our disciple Yun Qi and Princess Meiyin from Glazed Light Realm had fallen in love with each other when they fought in battle. After that, a formal pledge of marriage was made while being witnessed by both parties' elders. The marriage will officially be complete 3 years from now. Bingyun? Mu Bingyun's words left Mu Huanji and the others at a loss. Even Hu Ruli and Yan Juhai were inclining their heads in puzzlement. No one would turn down a goddess because they were practically a ticket to the heavens. But Mu Bingyun knew that the woman Yun Qi sacrificed everything to meet was the sworn enemy of Qianai Yinger. Qianai Yinger was the reason the Heavenly Slaughter Star God's brother, the Heavenly Wolf Star God, had perished. Yun Qi knew this from a long time ago. This reason alone, especially considering Yun Qi's temperament and his obsession towards the Heavenly Slaughter Star God, meant that Yun Qi would never agree to this engagement. The fact that Brahma Heaven God Emperor was willing to marry his daughter to another man was something that no man in God realm dared to imagine even in their dreams. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it the dreamiest of rewards. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor mustn't have thought that Yun Qi would want to turn down his offer. No one, except a handful of people who knew about Yun Qi's feelings, would. But if he were to turn down the God Emperor's offer on the spot, he risked shocking the world and humiliating both the Brahma Heaven God Emperor and Brahma Monarch Goddess deeply. At the very least, it would be a far more serious offense than turning down the God Emperor's offer to accept Yun Qi as his personal disciple. Even if Brahma Heaven God Emperor had self-restraint from the gods, even if he hadn't shown a hint of emotion after the rejection, he would definitely be pissed off on the inside. Thankfully, Shui Qianheng had suddenly jumped out of nowhere and interrupted the dangerous conversation. This was just the buffer Yun Qi needed to deal with this peacefully. Mu Bingyun's claim hadn't just surprised the Snow Song realm. Shui Qianheng was just as surprised. Back then, he had been so angry he felt like swallowing Yun Qi alive. He was the one who forced Yun Qi to come up with the so-called 3-year promise, so that Shui Meiyin could spend 3,000 years in the eternal heaven-divine realm and forget about him. Frankly speaking, he had just about exhausted all of his face reserves when he decided to stand up and claim that that nonsensical promise was a formal wedding engagement. He might have put on a tough appearance, but in reality he was feeling pretty nervous on the inside, not to mention that between his daughter and Brahma Monarch Goddess, it was clear which side Divine Ice Phoenix sect would want to support. But contrary to his expectations, not only had Mu Bingyun admitted to the engagement, she practically sounded surer than he did. Oh! The Brahma Heaven God Emperor's eyes shifted slightly, but didn't reveal any emotion whatsoever. The ghost of a smile flitted across his features. According to my knowledge, Realm King Qianheng had loved his daughter like the most precious thing in the world ever since she was born in Glazed Light Realm, so I'm certain that her marriage is of the utmost importance to him. Does it make sense to you that Realm King Qianheng would so carelessly betroth her to someone else at the mere age of 15? Moreover, Yun Qi hails from a humble place, and he wasn't nearly as famous back then as he is now. Overall, he didn't deserve the Glazed Light Princess at all back then. Are you truly telling me that you agreed to this engagement despite all these conditions, Realm King Qianheng? The Brahma Heaven God Emperor's words caught everyone by surprise. They turned to stare at Shui Qianheng, and they discovered that the latter was speechless and barely hiding a tingle from his eyebrows. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor continued, "If Yinger were to become engaged to someone else, I would have declared it to the world and make preparations for a grand ceremony. My daughter to me is like Shui Meiyin to you, and yet this wedding engagement has appeared out of nowhere, and no one has heard about it. Now that is a little strange, don't you think?" Shui Qianheng's mouth twitched a little. He had stepped out in a moment of desperation, so of course he hadn't had the time to think through all of his excuses. Worse, he had forgotten that he was facing one of the scariest people that existed in the Eastern Divine region. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor had easily poked countless holes in the hastily formed lie. Shui Qianheng wasn't the only one who was shocked. Everyone on the side of the Snow Song Realm was about to experience a full meltdown. Glazed Light Realm is going to lose a lot of face today. Shrouding Sky Realm, King Lu Zhou sighed quietly. Shui Qianheng couldn't say anything in return, but Mu Bingyun remained calm despite the Brahma Heaven God Emperor's attacks. She said, 3 days ago, Yun Qi had suffered terrible injuries and exhausted all of his profound energy. However, he was able to recover fully and participate in the second match. If not for the divine water of absolute beginning that the Glazed Light Realm gifted us, Yun Qi wouldn't have healed under the divine Ice Phoenix sect's care. Shui Qianheng looked surprised. Everyone else's face changed. Shui Yinghen trembled like a leaf before he blurted in panic, "RR Royal FFFFFF Father, it's all my fault. I'm the one stole the water from little sis. It has nothing to do with her." Slowly turning his head to face Shui Yinghen, Shui Qianheng stared at his son with shockingly wide eyes. "Is that true? Did you, really? The divine water of absolute beginning?" Feeling as if his strength had departed him, Shui Yinghen collapsed to his knees and couldn't say anything in reply, trembling. Naturally, he was well aware of just how important the divine water of absolute beginning was, and just how big of a crime he had committed by gifting it to an outsider when Shui Qianheng was done with him. He would be lucky to get away with just a pair of broken legs. But contrary to his expectations, Shui Qianheng slapped Shui Yingyu on the shoulder and exclaimed emotionally, well done, well done. You finally did something good for once in your life. Well done, son." "Ha!" Shui Yinghen looked up stupidly from his position. It is, as you say, a verbal engagement that was kept under wraps. However, the Glazed Light Realm also sacrificed a drop of divine water of absolute beginning to heal Yun Qi's wounds." Mu Bingyun continued, "The divine water of absolute beginning is a divine object of primal chaos, and it is something that Glazed Light Realm could search for another 1,000 years and never find. If the Glazed Light Realm King truly didn't care for the engagement, he would never have given Yun Qi such a great boon, would he? That is why the divine Ice Phoenix sect is grateful to the Glazed Light Realm. We will never break off this engagement unless the Glazed Light Realm decides to do so themselves. It would be terribly ungrateful of us otherwise." Shui Qianheng, "Yun Qi." The conferred god stage was noisy, and the people were staring at Shui Qianheng in a different light once more. The divine water of absolute beginning was something even an ultimate divine master would fight for with their life. It was so precious that anyone would think twice before granting a single drop to the best member in the family, much less an outsider. Therefore, Shui Qianheng's precious daughter must really be betrothed to Yun Qi, and Shui Qianheng must have agreed to it. That was the only reasonable explanation. "Now I see." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor nodded slowly. "This king does sense the divine water of absolute beginning on Yun Qi, faint though it may be. I was even wondering where the Snow Song Realm had gotten the divine water earlier, but now we know that it was a gift from the Glazed Light Realm." Shui Qianheng straightened himself and said, "I was planning to leave the divine water of absolute beginning to my daughter, but Yun Qi was seriously wounded and healing slowly after the fight. Although the divine water is precious beyond belief, Yun Qi is soon to be my son-in-law, so it doesn't really matter who gets it. My daughter has only recently known love, but her determination is already stronger than I imagined. I couldn't bear to extinguish it because it strongly reminded me of her mother when she set her eyes on me for the first time. Also, I noticed that Yun Qi has unbelievable potential despite his lowly beginnings, and I was certain that his achievements would far surpass Luo Changsheng's. Since he was admirable, and to my liking from the beginning, I didn't feel too repulsed by the idea of an engagement." Yun Qi's mouth twitched slightly. "God damn, this old bastard is good at taking the ball and running with it, and his face is even thicker than mine. The reason we decided to keep things under wraps is because it was neither the right place or time to spread the news. I was going to make this public after the Profound God Convention had officially ended. Shui Qianheng explained seriously and dispelled the Brahma Heaven God Emperor's doubts with ease. Moreover, his words were infused with so much emotion that it was unquestionable. Shui Yinghen turned his head absent-mindedly before asking Shui Yingyu, "Has Royal Father always been such a person?" Shui Yingyu nodded. Shui Yinghen swallowed loudly. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor nodded slightly. It would seem that Yun Qi and the Glazed Light Princess's wedding engagement is real, and that divine water of absolute beginning was truly a most precious token of love. What do you think, Brahma Heaven God Emperor? He. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor smiled faintly. It is a beautiful tale, but it has nothing to do with my wish to marry Yinger to Yun Qi. Oh, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor glanced to the side. The honored men of the God realm have always had more than one wife, haven't they? I would be furious on my daughter's behalf had she been someone else, but the Glazed Light Princess is definitely worthy to share the same husband as Yinger. It was like a thunderbolt had dropped from the sky and blasted them all silly. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor actually agreed to let Qianai Yinger and Shui Meiyin share the same husband. This meant that Yun Qi was going to get both the Brahma Monarch Goddess and the Glazed Light Princess. And this F-Seeker had permission from Brahma Heaven God Emperor himself. Not even the Dragon Monarch had ever had a concubine despite being together with the Dragon Queen for tens of thousands of years. Right now, this Yun Qi was enjoying better treatment than even the Dragon Monarch himself. For many years, countless God Emperor grandchildren, King Realm Divine Masters, and even King Realm Kings from the Eastern Divine Region, Western Divine Region, and Southern Divine Region had sought after the Brahma Monarch Goddess. But they were always turned down kindly by the Brahma Heaven God Emperor, or plainly ignored by the Brahma Monarch Goddess herself. It was as if she didn't care for them at all. Later on, it was near impossible to even catch a glimpse of her true appearance. But Yun Qi, not only was he going to marry the Brahma Monarch Goddess, he was going to get the Glazed Light Princess as well. Even more infuriating was the fact that the Brahma Monarch Goddess remained perfectly quiet throughout the whole thing. She didn't object to the engagement at all. The eyes of every man at the conferred god stage turned red. Their jealousy was burning so hotly that it rivaled a sea of lava. The Dragon Monarch married the Dragon Queen, but he was the strongest existence in the primal chaos. It was a match made in heaven, and no one could say anything about it. But Yun Qi was a humble born who inherited his skills from a middle star realm. Even now, he was only a divine spirit. Why him? This guy deserves to be struck by lightning. Wait a second, struck by lightning. Something doesn't feel right about this. They literally couldn't imagine how jealous and furious the god children of the King Realms would be after they learned that Yun Qi was going to marry the Brahma Monarch Goddess, when they couldn't even win a smile from her despite forsaking both their honor and their lives. Master, what's going on? Huopoyan asked in confusion. Brother Yun is very strong, and the 9-stage heavenly tribulation was unprecedented, but this is just unusual, isn't it? Although he seldom went away from Flame God Realm, he wasn't so ignorant that he hadn't heard of the King Realms, nor the Dragon Queen and Goddess. No, Hugh Ruli shook his head slightly. It is the opposite. Their reactions are perfectly normal. For those in King Realms, their power, fame, and profound way have all reached the pinnacle. You could say that there is nothing else that they seek, except one thing, and that is the way of the true God. Is it because of that prophecy? Huopoyan grew even more confused. Of course, they wouldn't have acted like this if that prophecy was completely unsupported by facts. But the fact is that a 9-stage heavenly tribulation appeared right before their eyes. In that case, it is possible for the latter part of that prophecy, the part that foretold the return of the true God, to be real, isn't it? Yan Juhai added to his explanation. Many times the God Emperors have said that it was impossible for mortals to become true gods, but they were the ones that have never stopped searching for a way to become one. Now that a prophecy foretelling an unnatural heavenly tribulation has happened right before their eyes, it isn't hard to imagine that madness would grow in their hearts, even if there's only half a chance that the prophecy might actually come true. Is it? To that end, they can do anything. You mean they're trying to discover the secrets to become true gods from Yun Qi? Huopoyan asked blankly. Oh no, Hugh Ruli shook his head. If that secret turned out to be Yun Qi's innate talent, then no one could take it away from him or replicate his success, right? What I mean is that if Yuan-Chi came to fulfill the prophecy and become a true god, then the star realm he was in will become the king of all realms. That is why they're trying their best to pull Yuan-Chi into their faction, be it Brahma Monarch, Eternal Heaven, or Glazed Light. Although the Yuan-Chi right now is really nothing in their eyes, and no one can predict what might happen in the future, the words true God are to these supreme practitioners a profound way. Oh, it's something you literally cannot imagine right now. That is why their decisions are perfectly normal, even if they may seem incomprehensible to you. Every pair of eyes was set on Yuan-Chi. There were those who understood the Brahma Heaven God Emperor's decision, and there were those who thought that he and everyone else had gone utterly insane. They wished they were Yuan-Chi, and that they could switch identities with him right now even at the cost of half their lifespan. No, 80% of their lifespan. No, if they could serve the Brahma Monarch goddess and enjoy a single night of pure ecstasy, they would have no regrets even if they were to pass away the next day. Mu Bingyun said, Yuan-Chi, this is a great matter that concerns your future. Of course, it'd be great if you could join the Brahma Monarch God realm, but do not forget that you're verbally engaged to Princess Glazed Light, and you owe her a big favor. It is not a promise that should be taken lightly. Now, make up your mind. Whatever might happen to Yuan-Chi in the future, he was still a divine Ice Phoenix sect disciple right now. As a senior, Mu Bingyun had the right to command him. Thanks to Shui Qianheng buying him some time, Yuan-Chi finally figured out how best to deal with the situation. He bowed deeply towards Brahma Heaven God Emperor before answering, Forgive me for saying this, Brahma Heaven God Emperor, but I dare not accept your wonderful proposal. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Oh, dare not, you say? The Brahma Heaven God Emperor narrowed his eyes, his face inscrutable. Yuan-Chi said seriously, I may not have been in the God realm for long, but even I've heard of the Dragon Queen and Goddess. The difference between the Goddess and I is like the clouds of heavens, and the mud beneath one's feet. I'm absolutely overwhelmed and grateful for your willingness to marry your daughter to me, Brahma Heaven God Emperor, but I'm well aware that I'm not a match for her at all. I know that my future is the reason you made such a decision, Brahma Heaven God Emperor. In that case, why not wait for 3 years? Yuan-Chi raised his voice a bit. The conferred God battle has ended, and I will soon enter the eternal heaven divine realm to cultivate for 3 years. My future will be clear once 3 years have passed. If I'm successful by then I'd have no qualms accepting this proposal. But if I turn out to be nothing more but an ordinary person despite spending 3,000 years inside eternal heaven, my reputation aside, I would have disappointed and dragged you both through the mud. Yuan-Chi's explanation was perfectly reasonable, and it was in consideration of the Brahma Monarch God realm. After all, if he really turned out to be an ordinary person, the Brahma Monarch God realm would be the biggest joke of the God realm, not him. That being said, it was clear that he meant to turn down the Brahma Heaven God Emperor's proposal. This 3-year promise, it was just an excuse to avoid rejecting the Brahma Heaven God Emperor directly. Did he just allow this golden opportunity to slip through his fingers and run away as far away as he could manage? Is there something wrong with his head? Why do I feel like he just doesn't want her? Refusing even the goddess herself, he can't possibly be gay, can he? Ha 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 ha, Kang Shishin clapped as he laughed. Wonderful, just wonderful, to think that someone would dare turn you and your daughter down, Kai and I Fenshin. Ha 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 ha. Hey young boy, do you want to come to my place? I can see that you're a strong-willed person who doesn't wish to obey anyone's whims. In that regard, you're exactly the same as I if you agree to return to the southern divine region with me. You will fall under my personal protection. I guarantee that you'll have the freedom to do anything you want, take any precious treasure or profound art you like, and enjoy any beauty there is to enjoy in the southern divine region. I guarantee that your life there would be 100 times more cheerful than it is in the eastern divine region. Yuan-Chi. The eternal heaven god emperor glared coldly at him. Yuan-Chi is a denizen of the eastern divine region. This is no place for you to act as you wish. Heh, this kid would have been chased out of your doorsteps if I hadn't acted as I wished earlier, Kang Shishin countered. You! The eternal heaven god emperor felt his anger rising. Royal father, it was at this moment the Brahma monarch goddess spoke coolly. Yuan-Chi is correct. Whether or not he's worthy of becoming my husband depends on the height of his future achievements. Right now he has potential, but not the qualifications at all. The Brahma heaven god emperor never seemed to disagree with Kyanai Yinger's wishes. He nodded, all right, then we shall talk about this again once 3 years have passed. The biggest blessing in the history of the Eastern divine region flew away just like that. The crowd wasn't sure if they should be relishing or sighing in regret on behalf of Yun Qi. Yun Qi himself, though, was hiding a sigh of relief. Yun Qi! Suddenly, the dragon monarch broke his silence. The entire place was silent the moment he spoke. The dragon race has a long lifespan, but it is very difficult for us to reproduce. That is why I have no children despite living for nearly 200,000 years. The crowd was completely confused by his statement. It was common knowledge that birth didn't come easily to the dragon race, and everyone in the god realm knew about this. You bear a dragon soul, so it would not be an exaggeration to say that you are deeply connected with our race. The original owner of that dragon soul even more so. Therefore, I'd like to take you in as a stepson. Do you accept? Bzzz. The crowd hadn't yet recovered from the shock that was the Brahma heaven god emperor wanting to marry his daughter to Yun Qi, but another heavenly bolt had struck them without mercy. The eternal heaven god emperor wanted to accept Yun Qi as a personal disciple. The Brahma heaven god emperor wanted to marry the goddess to Yun Qi. The glazed light realm king interrupted the conversation despite the risk of offending the Brahma heaven god emperor. God Emperor Shishan of the southern divine region wanted to take Yun Qi with him and give him full permission to do whatever he wanted. But even that was outmatched by the dragon monarch, the king of all realms, desiring to take Yun Qi as his stepson. This was especially significant considering that the dragon monarch was still childless to this day. Insane. They had all gone insane. Everything had happened after the heavenly mystery. 3 elders had declared that prophecy. The god emperors claimed that they didn't believe in it, but they sure as hell weren't holding back as they made one crazy offer after another to seduce Yun Qi. Stepson. The childless dragon monarch accepting Yun Qi as his stepson, they didn't even dare to imagine the significance behind this. The eternal heaven god emperor looked shocked. Dragon monarch, are you? Don't worry. The dragon monarch raised his hand and stopped him. Yun Qi isn't a dragon, and he isn't a denizen of the Western divine region either. I'm not trying to take him away from you, nor will I force him to leave his homeland. I'm simply granting him an identity. The dragon monarch stared at Yun Qi before he declared in the most imposing voice in the world. He is my stepson. I beseech all those who would even entertain the thought of laying their hands on him to think of the consequences before they act. It sounded like he was answering the eternal heaven god emperor, but in reality speaking to Yun Qi. To think that the dragon monarch would declare such a thing, everyone in the snow song realm felt like they were dreaming. Mu Bingyun was the first one to recover and say urgently, "What are you waiting for? Thank the dragon monarch quickly, Yun Qi." Right now Yun Qi was bright as a shining supernova, but his background was incredibly thin. What the dragon monarch offered him personally, the strongest talisman in the entire world, was exactly what Yun Qi needed right now. Yun Qi bowed, but the wild joy that should have appeared on his features was missing for some reason. Instead, he answered calmly and seriously, "Senior Dragon Monarch, you are the indisputable king of the world, and your status and honor are rivaled by no one. I'm not one to undervalue myself, but even I know that I'm not worthy to become your stepson." The Dragon Monarch replied indifferently, "The entire world may think that you are unworthy, but if I think you are worthy, then you are." No one would dare question the Dragon Monarch's decision. Yun Qi continued, "I am young and inexperienced, but I'm aware that a father-son relationship is drastically different to the friendship between friends or brotherhood between sect mates. If there exists neither blood, nor great love, nor great favor between two people, then it isn't right for them to call themselves father and son. Therefore, if I accept your offer today and call you my father for the sake of self-interest, I'm certain that I will be despised by the world and disappoint my birth parents. Even you may look down on me for making such a choice, Senior Dragon Monarch." The conferred god stage was silent once more. Everyone was exchanging glances with each other, looking like they had just seen a living ghost. When the Brahma Heaven God Emperor and Eternal Heaven God Emperor offered to accept him as their direct disciple, he had turned them down. When the Brahma Heaven God Emperor offered to marry his daughter, the goddess, to him, he had turned him down. Just now, the Dragon Monarch declared his intention to accept him as his stepson, but he still had turned him down. The God Emperors might have gone insane, but this Yun Qi was even crazier than they were. He was utterly incomprehensible. What on earth was he thinking? "Yun Qi, you..." Yun Qi's answer made Mu Bingyun deeply anxious, but she stopped herself from persuading him when she abruptly recalled his temperament. What on earth is he thinking? Mu Bingyun muttered to herself. The dragon monarch frowned slightly, but didn't grow angry with Yun Qi. Instead, he said something no one except Yun Qi understood. You should know why I've arrived at this decision. Yun Qi? The dragon monarch sighed internally when he saw Yun Qi's expression, but he didn't try to force the issue. It would seem that you have a plan of your own. Never mind, I won't force this on you. The dragon monarch's eyes flashed after he said this. Then he sent a shining white jade that was shaped like a dragon floating towards Yun Qi. The eternal heaven god emperor frowned at first. Then he blurted, "The dragon god mark." Every divine master's expression changed when they heard this. "This is the dragon god mark," Dragon Monarch said. "It is imbued with draconic aura, and in the Western Divine region that mark represents my will." Yun Qi was moved by the Dragon Monarch's action, and this time he didn't turn down his gift. After accepting the Dragon God mark carefully, he bowed deeply. "Thank you for your gift, Senior Dragon Monarch. I cannot possibly repay this right now, but I will definitely." "That is unnecessary." The Dragon Monarch waved his promises away. "If you show the Dragon God mark in the Western Divine region, no one will dare to disobey you. But the same cannot be said if you're in a different Divine region. If there comes a day you believe that the Eastern Divine region is no longer suited for you, you are free to come to the Dragon God realm. With the kind of dragon soul you possess, you will find the Dragon God realm to be the safest haven in the entire world." The Dragon Monarch's words were clearly meaningful, and Yun Qi knew very well what he was implying. After storing the Dragon God mark safely, he said gratefully, "I will not forget your words, Senior Dragon Monarch." The situation had changed in far too dramatic and violent a manner. So even though Yun Qi had managed to cope with the changes, his back was already drenched in sweat. He knew that he had rejected something that someone else would not even be able to dream of in 10,000 lives. And he also knew that his act of rejection was an action that would be viewed as absolutely inexplicable by everyone else. But, in the end, his desires and thoughts were something that only he himself could know. After putting away the Dragon God mark, Yun Qi was afraid that another strange incident might occur, so he spoke up. "This junior has actually already thought of the skill that he wants to learn. Is it all right if I make it clear right now?" "Oh, certainly." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor nodded his head. "However, the King Realms possess many profound arts which require unique bloodlines, and some of our profound arts are forbidden to ever be divulged to outsiders." "This junior understands," Yun Qi said as his gaze swiveled towards where the Star God Realm were seated. "This junior hopes to be fortunate enough to be allowed to learn a divine technique unique to the Star God Realm, Star God's Broken Shadow." "I see." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor nodded his head. He could scarcely quell the small surge of disappointment in his heart upon knowing that his Eternal Heaven Realm had not been selected. Star God's Broken Shadow is indeed a divine technique that is unique to the Star God Realm, and it is not one that requires a particular bloodline, nor is it one that is forbidden from being taught to outsiders. Star God Emperor, how do you feel about this? The Star God Emperor's brow faintly twitched, as it was eminently clear that he had not expected Yun Qi to actually choose his Star God realm in the first place. He had rejected the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. He had rejected the Brahma Heaven God Emperor and the Brahma Monarch Goddess. He had rejected the Dragon Monarch. But to think he had actually chosen his Star God realm, even though it was only about choosing the prize for coming in first in the conferred God battle. For those few fleeting moments, the Star God Emperor actually bizarrely felt like he was being overwhelmed by the favor being shown him by a superior being. Just as the Star God Emperor was about to speak, the Moon God Emperor suddenly spoke up. "Ah, now that's curious. In the eyes of this king, your Snow Song Realm's moon-splitting cascade isn't inferior to Star God's Broken Shadow. Furthermore, the Star God's Broken Shadow technique is one that is hard to learn and is hard to master. Furthermore, it is not able to achieve that wondrous invisibility. Therefore, your choice is a truly strange one indeed." Indignation spread across the Star God Emperor's face, and it seemed like he was about to erupt in anger. Yun Qi replied, "When Master taught me the moon-splitting cascade in the first place, she mentioned that the ultimate profound movement skill in the Eastern Divine region belonged to the Star God Realm's Heavenly Slaughter God. Special mention was given to her Star God's Broken Shadow technique. She said that it was an exquisite and peerless profound movement skill, which was among the techniques that stood at the summit of all profound movement skills in the known universe. So even though my sect's moon-splitting cascade is indeed excellent, It definitely can't be compared to the star god's broken shadow technique. It was because of this that this junior's heart became set on this from a long time ago. If I am able to cultivate the star god's broken shadow technique, even if my talent is sorely lacking, and it is hard for me to attain mastery of the skill, just being able to personally witness it myself would fulfill one of my heart's desires. So I would hope that the star god emperor could fulfill my wish. The sincerity in Xianxia's tone also carried some notes of impatience. The star god emperor slowly nodded his head, and it was rare to see his face light up with such brilliance in front of the other god emperors. He gave a faint smile as he said, "Star God's broken shadow is indeed one of the ultimate profound movement skills in all of the Eastern divine region, but it is also indeed hard to learn and hard to master. If you went by trying to learn the divine art alone, it would perhaps be extremely hard to cultivate." But as he paused mid-sentence, his eyes turned towards someone as he spoke. "Eternal Heaven God Emperor, the gathered heaven-chosen children are only entering the eternal heaven divine realm 1 month from now, right?" "That is correct." "Good." The star god emperor gave another nod of his head. "How about this then? Xianxia, you can follow this king back to the star god realm, and this king will order the heavenly slaughter star god to personally impart to you the star god's broken shadow technique. Then after a month has passed, I will dispatch people to deliver you back to the eternal heaven realm." The face of the heavenly origin star god Tumi, who stood beside the star god emperor, faintly twitched, but after that, a realization seemed to dawn over him. The brows of the eternal heaven god emperor faintly sank, but he suddenly heard Xianxia's extremely moved reply. "This is something that this junior could only dream of. Since that is the case, I deeply thank the star god emperor for fulfilling my wish." The eternal heaven god emperor could only swallow the words that he was about to say. After that, he turned around and announced instead, "I'm afraid we won't need a month. Moon God Emperor, since all of the heroes of the Eastern Divine Region are present, you should have something to tell us all, correct?" The Moon God Emperor stepped forward after he heard those words, and he gave a soft laugh as he said, "Even though the profound God convention has indeed come to a close, all who are gathered here should not be in a hurry to leave, because just half a month from now, it will be the date of this king's new marriage. Most of the people present today should have already received the invitation that this king has sent out. So I hope that all of you will grace me with your presences once the time comes. The 1,000 heaven-chosen children that were decided by this profound God convention represent the future of the Eastern Divine Region. Since the time to enter the eternal heaven divine realm will be a month from now, then when the time comes, please come as well." After the Moon God Emperor finished speaking, it was natural that countless voices responded to those words. "We congratulate the Moon God Emperor on his wonderful wedding. The wedding of the Moon God Emperor is a grand occasion for the entire Eastern Divine Region, so how could we miss out on it? To be able to receive the Moon God Emperor's invitation is great fortune indeed. We will definitely come when the time arrives." Who would dare to reject the invitation of the Moon God Emperor? Furthermore, to a vast majority of those who were present, being able to enter the Moon God realm would be the first, and perhaps the only time they would be able to travel to such a place in their entire lives. So there was absolutely no reason for them to not go. It was just that when one mentioned the Moon God Emperor's wedding, everyone would unconsciously remember the great scandal, which happened all those years ago. That scandal was enough to cause any man to lose all of his dignity and prestige. But just 30-odd years later, the Moon God Emperor actually, once again, announced his impending marriage. In the vast God realm, even 300 years, much less a short 30-odd years, would not be sufficient for people to forget that enormous earth-shaking scandal. Even if the Moon God Emperor had once again found an incomparably admirable girl, he should not have announced his impending marriage yet again, given the exceedingly short span of time that had passed since his last marriage announcement, because this was no less than exposing one's own trauma and disgrace. The Moon God Emperor had not only done so, but he had made the event especially grand and well-known. The invitations had started to be sent out 3 years ago, and among those who had the qualifications to receive the invitation to observe the battles between the contestant of the conferred God battle, a large number of them had indeed received the invitations sent by the Moon God realm. Furthermore, even though the marriage between the Moon God Emperor and Yue Wugu had been so extravagant that the entire realm of the gods knew of it, only the King realms and the upper star realms had been invited. This time, however, even the middle star realms and some of the lower star realms had received the invite. It was very clear that this marriage of the Moon God Emperor was not only as grand and showy as it was before. They obviously also wanted to make it an even grander spectacle than it was before. "Master, are we also among the invited?" Hugh Poyan asked. "Of course," Hugh Ruli said. "To the best of my knowledge, all of the middle star realms were invited as well. A god emperor sending out wedding invitations to all the middle star realms. This is something that is nearly unheard of." "That's great," Hugh Poyan said excitedly. "If it's like this, then we can visit the fabled Moon God realm." "Heh, the Moon God realm. I'm afraid that this sort of opportunity won't come a second time," Yan Juhai said with an emphatic sigh. As one of the Flame God three-sect masters, even he did not have the qualification to take a step into the Moon God realm. The only reason why the Moon God Emperor would make such an arrangement is because he wants to completely wash away the disgrace he suffered all those years ago, Hugh Ruli said. "It looks like the future Moon God Empress is definitely no ordinary person. Yue Wugu, who possessed the divine stainless body, is already a unique existence in this world. For the Moon God Emperor to act in such a way, it must mean that this Moon God Empress must definitely be better than— No, she must be far above Yue Wugu," Yan Juhai said with furrowed brows, but after that he shook his head. "That isn't something that people like us can imagine." "Well, we will know once the time comes," Hu Ruli replied. It was at this moment that a voice suddenly rang out at an inopportune time. "HMPH, I heard that the Moon God Emperor had invited all the heroes in the realm to his wedding this time around, and it was as if he wanted everyone in all the myriad worlds to know. But given the scale and grandeur of this event, the Moon God Emperor better be extra careful. Because if even the smallest incident happens yet again, well, let's forget about you because your own honor and dignity has long been thrown away. It would be bad if you dragged the entire Moon God realm through your mud and made them the laughingstock of the known universe as well." After those words were uttered, the entire conferred god stage descended into a shocked silence as everyone felt their hearts thumping in their chests. Shockingly enough, the one who had said those things was the Star God Emperor himself. The grievance that lay between the Star God realm and the Moon God realm had been festering for a long time. The disgrace the Moon God realm had suffered all those years ago was also seen as something that had been perpetrated by the Star God realm, so it caused the relationship between the two realms to worsen dramatically. The words uttered by the Star God Emperor were undoubtedly meant to cruelly jab at the greatest humiliation the Moon God Emperor had ever suffered in his life, in front of all who were present. The eternal Heaven God Emperor was also nearly shocked out of his skin. The Star God Emperor and the Moon God Emperor had promised him that they would put aside their grievances and grudges for the duration of his profound God convention. But who would have thought that the Star God Emperor would provoke the Moon God Emperor the moment the curtains closed on the profound God convention? He was just about to speak when he discovered that the Moon God Emperor did not seem the least bit agitated. Instead, the Moon God Emperor let out a great roar of laughter. "Ha ha ha ha. Many thanks for the Star God Emperor's reminder. Half a month from now, I will also insist that the Star God Emperor grace us with his presence. If you don't come, it will be one of the great regrets of my life." The Moon God Emperor's reaction struck everyone dumb there and then. The Star God Emperor had clearly not anticipated that the Moon God Emperor would react in such a way. Not only had he not gotten the least bit upset, he had even cheerfully sent an invitation his way. A nameless anger suddenly surged up in his chest at this sudden turn of events, but he had nothing to take it out on, so he merely flung his sleeve aside as he gave a cold snort. "When the time comes, I'll also have to trouble the eternal Heaven God Emperor." The Moon God Emperor gave the eternal Heaven God Emperor a small bow, a faint smile playing along his lips. After he had mentioned his wedding, that was to be held in half a month, his mood had clearly become extremely good. As a result, the Star God Emperor's deliberate provocation felt like nothing more than harmless tickling to him. This undoubtedly caused everyone to become even more intrigued and speculative about this mysterious Moon God Empress, whose identity had yet to be revealed. Heh. To have the opportunity to use my limited power to aid the Moon God Emperor for his big day is truly a fortunate thing indeed, the eternal Heaven God Emperor said with a mild laugh. After he said those words, he announced, "This session's profound God convention came into existence because of the Crimson Crack. So if the worst-case scenario truly does occur in the future, These heaven-chosen children can be a strong source of strength and hope for our Eastern divine region. However, at present, the profound God convention has been drawn to a perfect close. The Moon God Emperor's joyous occasion is also nearing, so I would beseech everyone to temporarily put aside their worries about the crimson crack and stay for a while in my eternal heaven realm. Half a month from now, this king will bring all of you along with me to the Moon God realm. Xianxia, since the Star God Emperor has already granted you permission, you should follow him to the Star God realm for this period of time. You just need to return half a month from now. The Moon God Emperor's wedding is a grand occasion that will last through all the ages. If you miss it, it will truly be regrettable. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor had deliberately said this to Xianxia, or perhaps these words were for the Star God Emperor himself. Yes, Xianxia replied. He had little to no interest in the Moon God realm and the Moon God Emperor, and if he could fulfill his wish to meet Jasmine in the Star God realm, he would definitely wish to stay there for a longer period of time. But right now, he was unable to reject this invitation in front of everyone, so he had no choice but to comply for the time being. In the peaks of the distant clouds above, a red figure soundlessly faded into the distance. Moon God Realm, God Empress Palace. A woman was dressed in a long moon-white robe, the robe of her skirt pooling about her feet. The robe was embroidered with luxurious and mysterious jade markings. It glowed with the luster of gems. A head of fine black hair was loosely bound up by moon-white tassels. But apart from these tassels, there was not a single decoration or accessory adorning her body, nor was her face or skin touched by any cosmetics. Yet her slender neck and her jade mane was pale as snow and rosy as rogue in all the right places. Even though one could only see her silhouette, it already seemed like one was looking at a gorgeous woman who was as dreamy as a celestial. At this moment, an aura approached at a fast yet cautious speed. Very quickly, a girl descended from the sky. She bowed her head as she entered the temple before making a full bow to the back of the woman. "Jin Yue, have you found out the cause yet?" The woman did not turn around as she softly uttered those words. Even though her tone was inquisitive, it was also exceptionally calm. So it was clear that it was not something that overly bothered her. "I reply to the God Empress." In contrast to the indifference of the God Empress, the girl seemed to bubble over with emotion. The black clouds which previously appeared not only covered the Moon God realm. In fact, it's rumored that the entire Eastern divine region was engulfed in those dark clouds. Furthermore, the reason, if I said it perhaps the God Empress would not believe it, but it seems to have happened because one person broke through from the divine tribulation realm. The God Empress tone finally showed a flicker of change as she spoke. "Thunder clouds of tribulation lightning." "Indeed," the girl replied. "That person drew to himself a 9-stage lightning tribulation, something that has been unheard of in history, and the thunder clouds themselves were extraordinarily exaggerated. Furthermore, this is no mere rumor, because it happened on the eternal heaven-conferred God stage when the conferred God battle was happening. So the Lord God Emperors themselves personally stood witness to these events, and the entire Eastern divine region was also able to personally witness what happened via the star tablets. Moon God Empress. That person not only drew a 9-stage lightning tribulation towards him, he even managed to safely break through to the divine spirit realm after that. He beat Luo Changsheng, the one who was said to be the leader of the 4 god children of the Eastern region, achieving first place in the conferred God battle. These events have already shocked and awed the entire Eastern divine region. 9-stage lightning tribulation. This has never happened before, even in ancient times. So it looks like this person definitely possesses extraordinary talent, the God Empress said in a low voice. "Oh right, that person is the Snow Song disciple that this servant mentioned to the Empress before." Xianxia. As she thought of the reaction the God Empress previously had towards this name, the girl's voice grew ever so cautious. The God Empress remained silent for a long period of time. The girl presented a profound imagery stone with both her hands. "This is the profound image that we recorded from the star tablet. If the God Empress has any interest, you can. There's no need." This was a huge event which had rocked the entire Eastern divine region, yet the God Empress seemed completely indifferent to it. "Go and fetch today's medicine for me. Does the Empress yet again want to personally deliver it to Madam? This servant will go and fetch it." The girl retreated with soft steps, but she stopped right in front of the palace gates before she said in a clear and loud voice, "Our Lord God Emperor should be back in a few hours' time. At that time, he will definitely rush over to see the Empress." You may go. No ripples appeared across the god-empress face, and her voice was soft and gentle, but it possessed a cold detachment which caused everyone to shy away.